Special meeting of the Planning Commission of October 29th, 2025 is now called to order. I will now call the roll. Commissioners, please state here when your name is called. Commissioner Burnett.
Here.
Commissioner Raspy.
Here.
Vice Chair Birch.
Here.
Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Stump.
Here.
Commissioner Sorty.
Here.
Sorry, I did that out of order just to keep you guys on your toes. And I am here as well. Please stand if you are able as Commissioner Raspy leads us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As the Planning Commission conducts the meeting this evening, we encourage active participation by the public, which is essential to the work of the Commission. The public can participate in several ways. Prior to a meeting, written comments about agenda items may be submitted to staff. During the meeting, there are two opportunities for members of the public to participate. First, during the verbal communications period, an individual may speak on any topic that is not on the agenda. Second, during the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting, any member of the public may speak about an agenda item. You will be advised of times when to speak on each of these items. If you wish to address the Commission tonight during the verbal communications portion or a public hearing, please raise your hand on Zoom, or for those here in person, complete a yellow speaker card and give it to a staff member. When you are called to speak, please come up to the podium and speak directly into the microphone as this meeting is being recorded. State your name and address for the record, or indicate that you are speaking anonymously. You will have 3 minutes to speak. We will now begin with verbal communications, and this is the time when we will be speaking on items not on the agenda. So I have one card right now. Captain Seuss, can you please come up, and you will have 3 minutes to speak once you start. And staff will let you know when that 3-minute time period is up.
And Madam Chairperson,
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, since it is a special meeting, comments are limited to topics that are on this special meeting agenda.
Oh. Verbal communications was on the original, is on the agenda, so I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And so it's verbal communications related to what's on the agenda tonight, which is North 40 Phase 2.
Okay. Do you have comments about North 40 Phase 2? Can we pause the time for a second? I just want to clarify what the language was in the agenda that was sent out to the public, just to make sure that.
It does say verbal communications, but the Brown Act provides that verbal communications are limited to the topic that's on the agenda, and it's not necessary to state that on the agenda. But that said, it's at the chairperson's discretion.
Okay, it does say on the agenda, on matters not listed on the agenda tonight. And that was distributed to the public, so.
Okay, all right.
Maybe we just want to make sure that that is changed in the future for a special meeting, but are we okay with, okay, can we start the timer over again? I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks.
Council members, as you can see that I got a letter here from coming in as a Captain Seuss. I got a letter here from the town, and this will be my last time, and I'm not to come to any more of the planning commissions, because I'm, what I've been saying along this. And it was just on the 21st, and I sent responses back, and it's getting pretty hectic. But I'm going to do my routine. Since this is my last one, I always have my cat in the hat, because this is a cat in the hat town. Should we tell her about it? No. what should we do? Well, what would you do if your mother asked? Okay, I sent in a couple pictures, and there are 3 pictures, but the draft minutes, well, I'll first, since this is my last meeting, the draft minutes on 9:10 and 9:24, when we talked last time, and I was really appreciative of you correcting everything. If you look at the tape, they skip out of the minutes. You know, when I got to Yellow Brick Road, Lynn Avenue, 151, you know, all the safety concerns, that's all, you know, you can't hear it. The mic I know works, but it's not there. It's just, and then when I talked about Rob Stump, that also cut out, you know, because he was there, and I do bring flowers to things. I can't bring flowers anymore, or candy, because it's Halloween, and I want to pass this out. So it's out. I'm going to put this out to the public. The first thing was the thing about was in the paper about telling grandchildren. I did not stay silent for the protest because I'm on the Project 2025 is going on, and I've talked about that, and there's some really shady stuff going on. The second picture was a thing about how 40% of the residents here are born outside of the United States, because we're right next to our Spanish thing. It's in this paper. It came out off official look to expand ICE fights. And one of the things, and the last one was minutes of review November 5th. And it shows that I've been fighting for this a while, and it shows a videotape of 122 second that the town has that of a second shooter that I've been saying, hey, people should look at this. So thank you for your time and consideration. I wish I had a little bit more time to.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you for.
Project 2026 was the soccer. The $1 billion industry that we could have.
Thank you. Okay, so we will be, are there any, I don't have any other speaker cards for this part, and since we had a speaker in person, I think we should honor it if there's anyone on Zoom with their hand raised.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Okie doke. So we are going to be moving on to our public hearings, and with item number 1, the only item on our agenda tonight, which is to consider a request to construct a mixed-use residential development, 450 units, a vesting tentative map, site improvements requiring a grading permit, and removal of large protected trees under Senate Bill 330. On property zoned North 40, specific plan housing element overlay zone located at 14859, 14917, 14925, and 16392 Los Gatos Boulevard, 16250, 16260, and 16270 Burton Road, and assessor parcel number 424-07-116, APNs 424-07-009, 052, 053, 081, 094, 095, 115, and 116. Architecture and Site Application S-23-031 and Subdivision Application M-23-005. Additional environmental review is necessary pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15183. Projects consistent with a community plan, general plan, or zoning, since the proposed project's environmental impacts were adequately addressed in the 2040 General Plan EIR as applicable. Property owner is Yuki Farms, and the applicant is Grosvenor Properties America. And before the staff report, can I have a show of hands for commissioners that have visited the site? And are there any disclosures that need to be made? Great. Okay. Director Paulson, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, so as mentioned, this was continued. The Planning Commission last heard the project on April 30th at a special meeting. At that time, the CEQA analysis wasn't completed. There was a lot of detail regarding the proposed project. For this evening, I'm going to kind of just high level touch on the major components of the project, discuss what is in tonight's staff report, and tonight will be a tag team effort between myself and the town attorney. So this project, you laid out the details. It's going to contain a mixed-use building that is approximately 7,800 square feet of commercial, 255 residential units, 10 of which will be affordable. The building is 7 stories tall and is nearly 100 feet. There's also a affordable housing building that will have 67 affordable units and 1 manager unit. That building is 5 stories tall and approximately 62.5 feet. The project also includes 127 townhomes across 17 buildings. Those are 3 stories in height, ranging from approximately 44 to nearly 49 feet. And lastly, there's 2 commercial buildings that are approximately 7,200 square feet between the 2 of them. They're both 1 story, between 25 and 27 feet. As mentioned, there's a lot more detail on other specifics in the April 30th staff report. This evening, the staff report for tonight really has information regarding 5 topics, which is the Housing Accountability Act, State Density Bonus Law, BMP unit phasing, No Net Loss Law, and also CEQA, which is California Environmental Quality Act. Town attorney is going to handle the majority of those. I'll touch on the BMP phasing as well as the no net loss law. So the applicant, as you read in the correspondence, is requesting a concession to allow the occupancy of 127, the total number of townhomes, without any necessary triggers for the affordable units. Obviously, this is a joint effort ultimately. Currently, Eden Housing is proposed to build those housing units. The applicant has provided an alternative, which allows for the 127 units to be built. And then if the affordable housing units aren't built at that time, then there's an option to put those units in the apartment building, the mixed-use apartment building, until such time as the affordable housing building is built, and then those restrictions could be transferred. The applicant explains in their justification that it's a financial impact for them, and so they are requesting an alternative condition other than what the town staff is currently proposing, which is a proportionate 17% throughout construction, which is typical of our guidelines. The no net loss law next. So the town's required through a housing element law to maintain enough capacity to meet our RHNA in each of the income categories. This project, along with 2 other housing element projects that the Planning Commission has seen, 2 of which have been approved by council, staff's required to do an analysis based on the remaining sites in the site's inventory, along with other either proposed and or approved projects to make sure that those income categories remain whole and don't go into a deficit. This project, as is illustrated in the staff report, will go into a deficit in the very low and the moderate unit income categories. So there's findings to that effect in the staff report. As previously mentioned, this is an SB 330 project. They are utilizing state density bonus law, which entitles them to 2 concessions and unlimited waivers. Those are all outlined. While they meet the definition of a builder's remedy application, to date, they haven't necessarily invoked that. And so with that, staff ultimately recommends that the Planning Commission consider the project. If it finds merit, there are recommendations on page 15 and 16 of the staff report, should you decide to make a recommendation this evening. There's 2 addendums for tonight's meeting, as well as a desk item. And then I wanted to clarify a couple errors in the staff report. First, in the subject line on page 1 for the report, erroneously, it states that additional environmental review is necessary. That's not the case. It is not necessary, as is referenced throughout the remainder of the report, as well as other documents and legal noticing. Additionally, there is a reference to 3 tables from a previous version of the staff report. There is only 1 table, which is on page 13. So tables A, B, and C are not in there. It's simply the table on page 13. So we have with us CEQA consultants. We have Parks and Public Works staff, and we'll have additional consultants. Ms. Whalen will also introduce after or before her presentation outside legal counsel that we have this evening. And that concludes my portion of the staff report, and we'll turn it over to Ms. Whalen.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Gabrielle Whelan, the town attorney, and I've prepared a PowerPoint for this evening to talk about the legal considerations associated with this project. And before I begin, I wanted to let you know that Nazanin Salehi with the law firm of Goldfarb and Littman will be available on Zoom to answer any questions that are not related to CEQA. And Christine Crowell with the law firm of Jarvis Fay will be available on Zoom to answer questions that come up with regards to CEQA. And so I will begin. Next slide, please. There are 4 major laws that are implicated with this application. The first is Senate Bill 330, and as Joel mentioned, this is a Senate Bill 330 project, meaning that it submitted a preliminary application that vested it to the development standards that were in place at the time it was complete. Next is the Housing Accountability Act. The third is Density Bonus Law. And the fourth is the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, and that's how I'll be referring to it throughout the rest of the presentation. So as I mentioned, Senate Bill 330 authorizes applicants to submit a preliminary application which vests them to the development standards that are in place at the time that the preliminary application is submitted. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 330 also requires an applicant to provide replacement units for existing units on site that are currently occupied by low-income households or have been occupied by low-income households in the past 5 years. I believe there are 8 residential units on the property right now, and 4 of those are units that will require replacement. Next slide, please. This project has vested to the development standards that were in place at the time its preliminary application was submitted. Next slide. And next, I'm going to give you an overview of the Housing Accountability Act. That is codified at Government Code Section 65589.5. It provides that when an applicant is including affordable housing in its project, the town is limited in its ability to deny, reduce the density of, or impose conditions on the projects. With regard to conditions of approval, the Act limits the town's ability to impose conditions of approval that would render a project infeasible. And the statute defines infeasible to mean capable of being performed. Next slide, please. So the first question to ask under the Housing Accountability Act is whether or not it's an eligible housing development project. And so in order to be eligible, the proposed project has to be only residential, mixed use, or transitional housing. This project qualifies under 1 and 2 because it has certain components that are residential only and certain components that are mixed use developments. Next slide, please. And then the next question is, how can a project be subject to the HAA? How much affordable housing does it need to provide? And the Housing Accountability Act, until recently, provided that 20% of the total units need to be available to low-income households or 100% available to moderate-income households. There are recent amendments to the Housing Accountability Act that have lowered the percentage from 20%. However, this applicant is staying with the 20% of the total units being affordable in their planning application. Next slide, please. The town does have the ability to apply objective development standards to Housing Accountability Act projects. And so in order to be an objective development standard, it has to be something that is consistent with the town's obligation to meet its regional housing needs allocation, which we refer to as RENA. And that's the number of housing units that the town needs to entitle pursuant to an allocation from the state. And then the town needs to apply its objective development standards in such a way to facilitate and accommodate development at the density that's permitted on the site and proposed by the development. Next slide, please. An objective development standard is something that's codified. It can't be subjective. It has to be verifiable based on a standard that's written down. And so that's an important factor. Next slide, please. The Housing Accountability Act does impose penalties for disapproval of eligible projects, and it defines disapproval to include not only a vote to disapprove the project, but a failure to comply with the town's deadlines for making a decision, or the town's imposition of a condition of approval that would render a project infeasible. And so we had talked a little bit about the town's ability to impose objective development standards. And I did want to mention that the act prohibits the town from imposing an objective development standard that would render the project infeasible. Next slide, please. And so then the question of infeasibility, the question will come up, well, who has to establish that it's infeasible? And the town, per the statute, the town bears the burden of establishing that a condition of approval will not render the project infeasible. And the town needs to use a preponderance of the evidence standard, meaning that the town has weighed the evidence and concluded that the evidence on one side outweighs the evidence on the other. Next slide, please. Under the Housing Accountability Act, there are 5 reasons that a public agency can deny a project or impose a condition that renders the project infeasible. The first is that the town has an adopted housing element and has met its share of RENA in all of the income categories proposed in the project. And while the town does have an adopted housing element, the town has not met its share of RENA in all of the income categories proposed in this project. The second grounds would be the project would have a specific adverse impact on public health or safety, and this finding would need to be based on an objective standard that's been adopted by the town. Next slide, please. The third potential grounds for denying or imposing a condition that would render the project infeasible would be if that condition or denial were required in order to render the project in compliance with a specific state or federal law. And with projects such as this, the state laws that come to mind are state density bonus law and the SB 330 requirement that replacement housing for the existing low-income units be provided. The fourth grounds would be that the project's located on agricultural land without adequate water or wastewater. Staff has not identified any facts that render number 4 applicable. Next slide, please. And then finally, the town could deny the project or impose a condition rendering infeasible if the town were to find that the development is inconsistent with both the zoning ordinance and a general plan land use designation. And next slide, please. The town has an adopted housing element in substantial compliance with state housing law. However, this finding is not available when a project is consistent with the density that's been identified in the housing element. And as the staff report notes, this particular project is consistent with the density that was identified for this site in the housing element. Next slide, please. And so I'm going to pause there before we talk about the other 2 laws to see if the commission has any questions about the Housing Accountability Act. And if you do have questions, I'll take the first pass. And then if I miss any information, Nazanin Salehi with Goldfarb and Littman will fill in the remainder.
Are there any questions at this time? Commissioner Burnett?
Yes, Ms. Whalen, you referred to the developer standing on the 20% of the units to be sold to lower-income households, but isn't that 13%?
Under the new law, it's 13%, but to date, this applicant has not chosen to use the new law. They've chosen to use and they have a choice between the prior builder's remedy or the Housing Accountability Statute and the amended Housing Accountability Act statute. They've elected not to take advantage of the new 13% lower amount.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to delve into state density bonus law. And so this applicant is using state density bonus law, which provides that applicants who provide specified amounts of affordable housing are eligible for density bonuses, meaning that you can build denser than what would be allowed under the town's ordinances, or incentives and concessions, or waivers. This particular applicant is not requesting an increase in the density on the site. They're sticking with the density that was allocated in the town's housing element. However, this applicant is seeking incentives and concessions and waivers. Next slide, please. The statute defines incentives and concessions as reductions in town development standards or modifications of zoning code requirements. And this can include reductions in setback, et cetera. And this particular applicant is seeking, well, actually, I'll talk about it under waiver. Next slide, please. Approval of mixed-use zoning or other incentives or concessions that result in cost reductions. And again, the burden is on the town to establish that the requested incentive or concession would not result in a cost reduction per the statute. Next slide, please. The density bonus statute also allows applicants to seek waivers. And the standard is that they can seek a waiver of a development standard that would have the effect of, quote unquote, physically precluding the development. Next slide, please. One of the waivers that this applicant is seeking is a waiver from the town's North 40 specific plan requirement that buildings within 50 feet of Los Gatos Boulevard be limited to 25 feet in height. Next slide, please. Are there any questions that the commission has regarding state density bonus law? Okay, next slide, please. And so finally, I wanted to give an overview of how CEQA was handled for this project. This project was evaluated pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15183, and that's a section that authorizes projects to tier from previous environmental impact reports under specified circumstances. Next slide, please. In order to use 15183, a project has to be consistent with the density that was established by zoning, a community plan, or general policies for which the EIR was certified. Next slide, please. This project is consistent with the density that was allocated to this site in the town's housing element. And the housing element relied on the environmental impact report that was prepared for the 2040 general plan. Next slide, please. 15183 does provide that any project-specific significant impacts which are peculiar to the project or to the site must be analyzed. Next slide. The town did prepare an initial study. The conclusion of the initial study is that there are no project or site-specific significant environmental impacts that have not been studied in the previous EIR. As a result, this project is tiering from the EIR that was done for 2040 general plan. Next slide, please. I understand that at the earlier meeting, there were questions that came up regarding traffic related to this project. And so I wanted to say that the town does analyze traffic impacts, but it does it outside of the CEQA document. The town they commissioned a traffic impact analysis. And we've also had a study session regarding the builder's remedy, and in that context, questions came up about cumulative impacts of all the planning applications that the town has received. And so this slide is included to show what other projects were analyzed in connection with this particular North 40 Phase 2 project. And that is my final slide. Are there any questions on the CEQA information or any of the other information?
Commissioner Stump?
Sorry, did you say any questions related to CEQA?
Any questions on any of the
On
presentation?
the slides, no.
Commissioner Sorty?
Yeah, just a general question with respect, this is bigger picture for me. I'm kind of the newbie planning commissioner here. I know we've got a mandate to provide 1,993 housing units by between 2023 and 2031. Could you give us a sense of kind of where we stand today with respect to how we're achieving that goal?
Well, I pull up the staff report real quick and take a look. There's a table, the table on page 13 will give you an idea of where we're at. I think we're 898 units above for above moderate. We have a deficiency in moderate. We're a little bit above on low, and then a deficiency on very low. So if you aggregate those relative to the 1993, we're in excess because we have a number of sites that are not housing element sites that are currently in the pipeline. So there are a number. I can look and see if I can come up with a general total at this point in time and then get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Sorty?
Another question, it's a little more specific this time. Just real quick with regard to condition number 6 and going back to phase 1 North 40. I know we had same master developer, I think the same affordable housing developer. Did we have a condition on that project that required the affordable units to precede or be blended in somehow with the project?
There was a trigger associated with a number of market rate units being granted certificates of use and occupancy. I want to say the number originally was 187. That might have been modified further down the line through an agreement with the town council. But yes, there was a trigger there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Burnett?
Yes, thank you. Question for staff. So regarding the density bonus law, the applicant, I believe, is seeking and agreeing to build affordable housing, but there's no, but is not committing to do so. Am I correct in the readings of?
That's town staff's assessment of the situation. I mean, town staff reads the statute to require that there be a commitment to have built the affordable housing. And in the applicant's presentation, they'll probably address their reading of the statute, but we currently have a different reading. And as a result, I have contacted HCD to request an opinion.
Could I just have a follow-up? Because that does affect the waivers and concessions, correct, with that?
That's true. In order to be eligible for the incentives, concessions, and waivers, one has to have sought and agreed to build affordable housing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stump?
I know we've had this conversation before about the 2040 General Plan EIR and the related environmental analysis, and we know that qualifying projects are definitely wanting to tier off of that plan. We have had discussion about cumulative impact over time, and certainly that the 2040 General Plan EIR could be suspect as far as literally being able to tier to it, because there have been substantial changes since the 2040 General Plan was completed. There are changed circumstances. Obviously, one of the biggest ones we've seen is 15 SB 330/Builders Remedy projects that the town is faced with in the largest development process in its history, with a concentration on Los Gatos Boulevard. And also, if new information becomes available, it would indicate that there should be a supplemental or a new program EIR under CEQA section 15162. That new information would be cumulative impact from multiple high-density projects, including projects not on sites identified in the housing element site inventory, and we have obviously a number of those as well. I guess my basic question would be, why is the 2040 General Plan EIR and the related environmental analysis still considered operative?
So I'll start, and then I think after me, it would be best if the CEQA consultant came on, and then after that, Christine Crowell, who's a CEQA expert. So the 15183 requires or specifies that a project can tier off of an EIR that was done for a previous project. And so it doesn't matter that elements of the previous project were rescinded. It's whether or not the EIR was done that analyzed the impacts of what was planned for in that general plan. Because that's one question that the town has been receiving is, does it matter that the land use and community design elements were rescinded? And our answer is no, it matters if the EIR is still effective. And so when we were debating using 15183, we asked our CEQA consultant, and I don't want to speak for her so she can come on next, but we asked her to analyze whether there were any new impacts that weren't covered in that existing EIR. And the town's conclusion was no. And so I think at this point, it'd probably be good to turn it over to the town CEQA consultant.
Good evening, Chair Thomas and Commissioners. My name is Terry Whistler-Adam. I'm a principal at EMC Planning Group, and we've been assisting the town through the CEQA process for this project, as well as others. And I don't really have much to add to Gabrielle's comment regarding the applicability of the certified EIR. Just again, reiterating that the EIR is still certified. Certification wasn't taken away when the land use element was rescinded. And as you know, CEQA is focused on environmental impacts and the environmental impacts of a particular project. And again, not whether that project is moving forward or not. But we do believe that the approach we used is appropriate for this project.
Commissioner Stump, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'll actually bring a follow-on. Thank you for that response. It just sort of seems like certified is almost like the good housekeeping seal of approval, saying, hey, we certified it, whether it's still operative or not, it's certified. That's sort of what I got from the response. But I'm going to pass by because, I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole. But what I want to revisit is back in April when we had the Genuine Automotive project before us. One of the stipulations or recommendations that came out of that is that going forward, we were going to be looking at cumulative effects of projects. In fact, the recommendation that went to the council for their June meeting to approve that project said that we thought about doing a supplemental to this EIR, but in lieu of that, the staff was recommending that each project address cumulative impacts. So my question would be, is the North 40 exempt from looking at cumulative impacts, or were cumulative impacts reviewed as it relates to the North 40 as well? Thank you.
So the town is requiring each project to do its own cumulative impact analysis, but we do have to cut off that analysis at a certain point. And so the point that we use to cut off the analysis is when the scope of work is prepared for the environmental work for each project as it comes through. And so at the time that the scope of work is finalized, all reasonably foreseeable projects will be analyzed. projects that come in after that scope of work was prepared will not be included. And then with regard to the work that was done for North 40 Phase 2, I'd like to turn it back to Ms. Whistler, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. I'd have to go back and look, but I believe our contract on this project is about 2 years old. The scope of work was prepared right before we got under contract. We did evaluate cumulative impacts. CEQA allows a couple of different options for evaluating cumulative impacts. One is a list of projects, past, current, and reasonably foreseeable projects. And the other is the development projections in a general plan EIR. So we used the general plan EIR projections in this particular initial study.
And through the chair, just additional, I probably shouldn't jump in, but I'm going to anyway. I think there needs to be some distinction because this has been a conversation for a long time. We've got a housing element that had sites that were evaluated based on the general plan. We've got some sites that have projects in that are meeting or near the housing element sites inventory from a total number of units. And then we have some other projects that are far exceeding, for instance, density. So, looking at this from that perspective, the housing element environmental analysis tiered off the general plan. This is compliant with that. So from this project's perspective, it's not creating any additional impact than has already been studied in one or both of those documents. I think when we go to look at the environmental documents and do the initial studies for some of these other ones that are exceeding what was proposed in the housing element, the outcome of that initial study probably ends up in a different path, whether that's an EIR, an MND. Now, obviously, that's all with the big caveat of the new state laws that just went into effect related to CEQA July 1st. But that's how we're proceeding with some of these other ones that are above and beyond, and most of the time well above and beyond what was studied in the housing element.
Chair, can I follow up? As I realize that a list of projects, I believe, for this level of study is not required to be published in the report itself, or were other projects published in this report, and maybe I just overlooked it? Did it identify, sort of like the traffic or the transportation analysis you just shared, look at all these projects that this transportation analysis took into account? Is anything similar like that in the initial study for the North 40?
I would turn to Ms. Whistler-Adam for that. I think I'll turn to her at this point.
Thank you, Joel. There is no list either in the initial study or separate from the initial study that was considered.
With the exception of the traffic impact analysis that you referenced, which obviously can feed into other areas of air quality, noise, things like that.
Yep.
Are we going to have opportunity to talk about the transportation analysis, or would now be the time to ask a question about the transportation analysis?
My suggestion would be maybe after public comment.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barnett, did you have a question?
I did.
Sorry.
I'll come back to it because I don't want to delay while I'm looking at my notes. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for staff at this time? Okay, perfect. Okay, we will now open the public portion of the public hearing on item number 1 and give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes, and then we will take comments from the public. So I have Steve Buster and whoever else on the applicant team can join you during this time. Thank you. You can remove the microphone if you want to be able to move around. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, you can go to the second slide already. Okay, good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Steve Buster, Senior Vice President of Development for Grosvenor. It's been about 6 months since our last meeting, so we're happy to be here back in front of you tonight. I will do a very quick recap of our program since it's been a while, but I plan to spend the majority of my time talking about the heavy infrastructure lift for this site as it relates to delivery of affordable housing. And then we can take questions. Next slide. This is just a reminder of the important connection between the phase 1 that's been completed and phase 2. Next slide. So phase 2 of the project is the subject of tonight's hearing and consists of 68 units in a 100% affordable building, which will be built by Eden Housing, the same group that built 50 senior affordable units in phase 1. 127 townhomes and 255 multifamily rental units, including 10 affordable. Total of 450 units. Anchored by 8 acres of open space, including the central meadow. Next slide. We have our land use attorney here tonight, Eric Phillips, who can address specific questions on this, but just in summary, we are in full compliance with the housing element, CEQA, and state density bonus law. Next slide. I want to take a quick step backward for a minute to explain how a project of this size and scale actually gets built, because I think many members of the public probably aren't accustomed to a project of this size with such elevated levels of infrastructure and utility costs. So for the last 5 years, we have spent millions of dollars on entitlement costs. That's architects, engineers, consultants, legal, etc. A very large component of the total cost is the actual cost to buy the land. Then we spend millions of dollars designing and engineering the actual backbone infrastructure and utilities. Then tens and tens of millions of dollars to build the backbone infrastructure and utilities. Most projects have main public streets and backbone utilities. We do not yet. That's grading, storm drain, sewer, water, electric, lighting, roads, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, you get the point. Not to mention town's requirements to do off-site improvements to Los Gatos Boulevard and permits and impact fees, again, totaling up to millions of dollars. My point here is that we are going to be approaching $100 million of investment before the first home is even completed. Next slide. And that brings us to the affordable housing condition and timing. I understand the town's intent, wanting to ensure the affordable housing gets built. The best way to ensure the affordable housing is built is to reduce restrictions and let us build the infrastructure. That will ensure that we can deliver a finished, fully served pad to Eden as soon as possible. The town's current proposal that affordable be built concurrently with the market rate units is infeasible. We need a minimum of 127 homes in order to finance the completion of the backbone infrastructure and then deliver the pad to Eden. Our proposal to the town gives you ample security and gives us ample incentive to complete the remainder of the units. Number one, only 28% of the units can get a C of O, certificate of occupancy, before Eden gets financed. 28%, that's it. Number two, we will commit to completing all of the infrastructure, that $100 million I talked about, to serve and deliver pads for the affordable housing and the multifamily rental building. Eden will commit to applying for funding at least once per year. If the multifamily building starts before Eden starts, we will provide for the affordable units there until Eden can. We even offered to transfer the finished pad for the affordable to the town if Eden's unable to perform within a certain amount of time. So these are items that I think are more restrictive than most times we do this in other cities, but they are more in line with what other cities and towns do to address this issue. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions right now? Okay, Commissioner Barnett?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Would Grosvenor have any objection to a condition of approval that would require the deed to Eden be delivered and recorded prior to the sale of the first unit? The purpose being to assure that the transfer occurs.
I need to think about the timing of that. Yeah, you want
to? Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. My name is Eric Phillips. I'm Land Use Counsel for Grosvenor and the applicant team. So that is something we could talk about. One reason that we might not want to do that, and I'll say what we can do instead. What I would suggest, and what is more common, is that before we start building any of the infrastructure or the housing units, the affordable housing restrictions be recorded against the property, which would require the property could only be used for affordable housing. Nothing else could develop there. We certainly agree that should happen first. The reason that we might not want to transfer the property to Eden immediately is twofold. One, they will need to receive it in connection with the rest of their financing to show that they can leverage that as part of their commitment. But two, this is a very remote possibility, but if Eden for some reason is not able to timely deliver the property, we want to still be able to control it and build it ourselves, work with a different partner. I certainly have no expectation that that will be the outcome. We think it's much more likely that Eden will timely deliver, but if we have turned over the property, it actually makes it more complicated to troubleshoot if there is an issue. So that's just something to think about.
Can I follow up, if I might? So I don't recall reading in the staff report material that Grosvenor was offering to transfer the property to the town under certain circumstances. Can that be elaborated?
Yeah, so that was an offer that we made as we were discussing the different options in the town with the town. The staff report does talk about some of the concepts that the town came up with. It does not discuss that we offered that. We were informed that the town was not interested in that. They were concerned that it would be too expensive, it would become an administrative burden, and not something that provided adequate security. So we were advised not to include that in our final proposal and our concession request. But it is something that we did put out there and offer and discuss at length with the town.
Thank you for that.
You have any more follow-up? You good? Do you have another follow-up
I'm on
question?
a roll here, yes.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
About the 20% versus the 13%. Can you clarify that?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you asked. So it is correct. When we originally applied back in 2023, the law required a 20% overall affordability commitment, and that was part of the original application. The law changed in January 2025, as the town attorney explained in her presentation. And in March of 2025, the applicant team did submit an updated application packet that reflected the requirements that go with the new law. So the affordability contribution was reduced from 20% down to 17%. The reason it's higher than the 13% that would be required to qualify as affordable housing under the Housing Accountability Act is that extra 4% is necessary to be eligible for 2 concessions under the density bonus.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's helpful. Indulge me for a second, see if I have any further questions. If Grosvenor proceeds to put 17% of the houses as below market into the improvements other than Lot 19, how would that be deed restricted? And how would you handle the subsequent transfer to Building 19?
Yeah, so that's that's an excellent question. So we would need a deed restriction that reflects, that commits both pieces of property to be devoted to affordable housing. If what we hope would happen is that we're able to work with Eden so that they deliver their project first. If they're not able to do that, if it's delayed and we move forward with the multifamily mixed income building first, that deed restriction would kick in, it would apply. We would have to provide 17% of the units that have been developed up to that point within that building. And then once the affordable housing on Lot 19 was fully developed, we could release the majority of those restrictions. 10 units are going to be affordable in that mixed income building regardless, but we could release the majority of those units from the affordability restrictions once they're able to be replaced within the Eden building. But, and then in the flip side, what we think is more likely to happen, Eden gets its financing, commences construction first, then the affordability restrictions on the multifamily building would be released for all but those 10 units.
For all but the 10, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thanks so much, Silver.
Commissioner Stump.
In your presentation was really helpful to be reminded this is a big project. And we are accustomed in working on affordable housing projects that the affordable housing is integrated and it's built concurrently with the projects. 20 homes, 155 homes, it's built in. What you're putting forward, and probably with your business model, is a struggle for the town because it doesn't allow us to disperse affordable housing across the development. This is going to be rental only, no opportunity to purchase, which I'm disappointed. I understand your business position, but I'm disappointed because I'm really interested in seeing if people that need affordable housing to be able to purchase affordable housing instead of just continue as renters. When we met back in April, I think we clearly communicated, although I don't clearly communicate currently, we clearly communicated that the affordable housing portion of this project could be no risk, that it's critical to get this affordable housing built. I do realize, in fact, I was really surprised, Mr. Phillips, in your letter that you sent today, caused me to go, wow, page A4. And it said that in some cases, building affordable housing can take as long as 10 years after project approval. And I sort of fell off my chair at that point in time. And I think it also made me realize that this is a big project. So I think what we are just really looking for, and I'll be really risky here and say I'll use the word guarantee, but we're trying to find a place that we can work together to guarantee this will happen, that the affordable housing will happen. And I think that's really important from the town of Los Gatos perspective, that affordable housing does get developed ideally sooner than later. Everything will click perfectly, but also realize that this may take a lot longer than we expected. So anything that can be done on your part to move us towards this, what can we do together to make sure that this affordable housing is guaranteed?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think you brought up a lot of excellent points and points for comparison. And I think what you said is quite instructive, that this is a large-scale development project that's different than when you're building just 150-unit multifamily building and can disperse all throughout a single project. And recognizing that difference, I think, is quite important. Probably the best analogy is phase one of the North 40 that was developed. And as we heard the community development director Paulson say before, the trigger for phase one was to allow, there it was 187 units, which was close to 60% of the market rate units be developed before requiring the affordable housing. And that was to allow a little flexibility with the financing and the delivery of the timing. What we're proposing here, to speak to the exact interest that you were raising, to guarantee there is a very strong incentive to deliver the affordable housing, is to self-limit to only being able to build 28%, less than a third of the project before we deliver the affordable housing either on Lot 19 in the 100% affordable building or in the mixed income apartment building. And the reason that it's so important in this type of project to be able to have that flexibility is so that there can be at least a little bit of market rate development that can help underwrite all of those infrastructure costs that Steve was describing that go into such a large-scale project. But because there is such a large investment, building, again, less than 30% of the units up front isn't enough to make the applicant team whole after doing all this development. They will be strongly incentivized to continue building and to deliver that affordable housing so that they can get to what they really want to build. And Steve didn't have time to talk about this during his comments, but Grosvenor's business model is to build, own, and operate multifamily housing. So ultimately, what they want to deliver is that mixed income multifamily building, and they're not going to be able to do that until they've delivered all the affordable housing. So that creates a huge incentive to keep the entire development team working to delivering that.
Can I?
Hold on.
Sorry.
Okay. Commissioner Barnett, are you good with that response? Do you have a follow-up? Oh, sorry, Stump, do you have a follow-up?
My question was kind of your project phasing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're talking about 127 townhomes first, then what?
Well, actually, do you want to speak to the phasing? Sure. Yeah, so Steve can talk a little bit about the way that the market will help deliver that.
Appreciate that.
Can you pull up the presentation? I think it's probably slide 3. Yeah. Next one. And the next one. Sorry. Got that totally wrong. Oh my God, I got it totally wrong. Next one. Yeah. Okay. So this should help. I am going to take your advice and take this out. It's a little easier. So with regard to the phasing, you can see on this diagram we have streets and infrastructure labeled as backbone A, and streets and infrastructure labeled as backbone B. So the first thing we will do after acquisition is design and engineer all of that work. We will then grade the site, mass grade the entire site. After mass grading, we will install that backbone A first. That includes a storm drain system that's required to serve the entire project. So it's very expensive. One of the reasons it's very expensive. And that storm drain system is over by block G. So by installing backbone A first, that opens up residential A, and likely residential C is the first townhome areas that would go first. Following those projects, hopefully Eden is going in block G already because they will be delivered a vertical ready pad at that point. We would then commence backbone B, which would open up residential B, block E, block I, and then finally the meadow. Does that help?
Yeah, and just my follow-up question would be, what portions of this project are you committing to unconditionally?
I mean, I guess what comes to mind is if I was applying for a permit to redo my kitchen and the city said, we'll give you the permit, but you have to redo the kitchen, I would never agree to that, right? So we can't guarantee anything. I have no idea what the market's going to be like. Phase 1 was approved in 2017. Summerhill just sold their last home a couple months ago. That's 8 years. If you can tell me 8 years ago what the market's going to look like, I could tell you when we're going to phase it all. But you strike when each product type is feasible and pencils, right? You can't guarantee anything's going to happen, but our business is to build, not to sit on land.
Commissioner Stump, do you have a follow-up? You're good. Okay, Commissioner Sordi, and then I'll get over here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to zero in a little bit more on the timing of the affordable. So maybe a few questions. They may end up going over to Eden, but I wanted to understand a little bit more about the schedule that you guys have planned to apply for funding. I know there's application deadlines by round, and then there's decision dates that happen so many months after, and then there's award dates that happen after that. If you could just give us a little bit more color and detail about how that schedule looks right now.
So Dixie's here from Eden Housing, and can I just say before she speaks is that if there's any doubt about, I mean, this is not Steve's affordable housing group that's proposed here. This is Eden Housing, which is one of the premier builders in the state, and who also has a track record in town here next door. So I just want to click, like, that's very, very important that this is a group that performs all up and down the state of California.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Dixie Bowles. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development for Eden Housing. If it falls, I'm really, really sorry. This project, I think, is designed in an optimal way to where it could fit many different buckets. There's two major buckets of major funding that we'll be looking at for the tax credits. One's called a 4% tax credit, one's called a 9% tax credit. One is less competitive than the other. Size does matter. In this particular case, with all the backbone infrastructure brought to it, it decreases the cost of the project, making this one very optimal to go either 4% or 9% based on cost alone. We also don't have to pay for land cost, so that tremendously impacts our viability and competitiveness for 9%. It's the same situation we had on phase one, and we originally began at a 4%, we went for a 9%. 4% tax credits are generally taken in 3 times a year. That can change from year to year based upon the allocation schedule of the state. 9% tax credits are generally taken in twice a year, once in March-ish and once in July. Add 3 months after that for the allocation date, and that is when the tax credits are actually done. Then we're on the clock. If we get awarded, we have 180 days to close the construction loan and start construction. 180, that's non-negotiable. If our failure to do so would mean we lose the tax credits, gain negative points, and be out of business for a period of 3 years. That's the penalty for not making those deadlines. Eden has never, in its 57th year of operation, missed that deadline.
And if I could follow up, what would prevent you from applying now? What are the hurdles in front of you? Entitlement, I would imagine, is one big hurdle.
It's a great hurdle. As a matter of fact, entitlements, including the approval of the design of the building, so the design, not the, you have to be building permit ready if you're going to get on the clock, but it is a threshold requirement to, we can't even submit the application to the state, but the state is only the one stop. In the easiest financial world of affordable housing finance, which is not easy at all, what you end up doing is you end up creating this layered bunch of financing. So the county is a partner. We can't get our commitment for the county until we have entitlements in place. So we do know that this site is a very, very important site for the county of Santa Clara. It's a high priority site. And so they are waiting anxiously to receive my application. They can't do that until we have an entitled site.
Okay, just a quick follow-up. I know that we've been throwing around these numbers like 8 years, 10 years, or God knows what, but if you were to get entitled, hypothetically, before the end of a calendar year this year, can you give us a sense of what the schedule would, you know, have entitlement, you'd have free land, you'd have the track record that Eden has, kind of sounds like a home run. If all those items were in place by January of 26, let's say, for sake of argument, when would we be looking at possible groundbreaking for affordable? Kind of a loaded question, but
3 years on a best case scenario, and let me tell you why. It'll take 1 year just to get through the design, the CDs and the DDs, and get the building permit done. So building permit, all of that, we get underway when it looks good, right? And in this particular case, we're glad that we're not underway because the building code is going to change in January. So all of that work would have been for naught. So there's some good bits and bad bits about being off schedule. So let's just say we're not going to have a building code change. If we get entitled, the first thing that I'm going to do is direct our internal team to go on plans. Go on plans because I need to be ready in case we get lucky. There's a lot of things that happened at the federal level a couple of months ago, and that is the 4% tax credit program got a 25%, so we only have to finance 25% of the project with bonds instead of 50%. Now I could get into the weeds really here. What that has done, and I was just at a meeting with the director of the Tax Credit Allocation Committee last week. What that has done is allowed them to award 4 times the amount of tax credit projects that they awarded in the preceding years. 4 times the amount. The backlog is huge. And so we know we better be ready. We have got to be ready because we are likely going to get those tax credits.
I just want to elaborate on that for 1 second. That's one advantage that we've had throughout this process.
Can you speak in the
I realized I
microphone?
wasn't in the mic loud enough. One advantage that this whole team has had through the process is having Dixie and the Eden team be involved in designing the unit count, targeting the affordability. This is not just a concept of affordable housing. This has been planned specifically to maximize the viability for attracting financing. The size of the units, the layout, the population served have all been designed and created to maximize the likelihood that this can be fully financed and delivered in the shortest period of time. It's not a hypothetical, we think we would like to do this someday. It's a very real project that's been strategically designed with an eye on delivering it, as you were asking.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rossby?
Thank you, Chair. This is probably a question best for the lawyer. I think you probably heard during our staff presentation, and a question was posed to staff regarding affordable housing and its impact to the density bonus. And that is that the waivers, concessions, and incentives are available if developer seeks and agrees, I think is the phrase, to the affordable housing. It is town's position, as I understand it, that there is no agreement. And she thought that perhaps you had a different opinion. If I could hear your opinion of what an agreement would look like, or if we currently have one.
Yes, so you're exactly right. The requirements from the state density bonus law is that there must be a single development application, which we have here. We just talked about all of the unified elements that are under one single development application. And the applicant must seek and agree to provide the affordable housing. I think it's clear that we are seeking approval. We've been working for many years to achieve approval of the ability to deliver this affordable housing. I think under the plain meaning of the word agree, too, we are meeting that standard. As we talked about with Commissioner Barnett, that there would be an affordable housing agreement that imposes affordability restrictions on the property, that ensures that it can only be developed for the affordable housing uses that we're talking about. I mean, that is literally an agreement to provide the affordable housing and ensures that nothing other than the affordable housing will be built on the portions of this project that are dedicated for the affordable housing in our proposal. During the staff portion of the presentation, there was the discussion about, well, is there really a commitment to providing the affordable housing? And I think, frankly, I think the answer is yes, for the reasons that we already spoke about, that the level of infrastructure and upfront cost, the tens of millions of dollars that Grosvenor is investing, that it can only recover after it's delivered the affordable housing, is that commitment to delivering the affordable housing. Otherwise, it's just throwing that money away, frankly. However, notwithstanding the fact that I think there is a commitment, I will note that the law does not use the word commitment. It says seek and agree. That commitment phrase goes above and beyond what the density bonus actually requires, even though, notwithstanding the fact, I think that what we've demonstrated is a commitment towards delivering the affordable housing. It's interesting, HCD has considered this question in other jurisdictions. They issued a letter to the town of Loomis, where they found that there an applicant did not seek and agree to provide affordable housing. But the facts there are actually quite different from here. There was no affordable housing development partner identified. They hadn't actually applied for the affordable housing, and they were looking to build 75% of the market rate units before delivering the affordable housing. And under those facts, I can see why maybe it wasn't seeking and agreeing, but that's very different than the situation we have here.
No, thank you very much.
I'm going to, and then Commissioner Burnett.
Oh, thank you. So back to costs, I just have a couple questions. So you were talking about you have already invested over 100 million in this project? Or is that proposed to be?
It will approach 100 million once all the roads, infrastructure, utilities are all in the ground, in the land, before we build any homes. We are in the tens of millions of dollars at this point already, and it's going to get a lot higher.
I just wanted to know how much of the infrastructure you have put in. Have you put in any of the?
We have not started. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 has not received any infrastructure yet.
Okay, thank you.
Because again, the project has not been approved. So the infrastructure that we've shown isn't something that the town has approved. So we can't get permits and start constructing yet until we get this approval.
Okay, thank you. You were sort of summarizing of what your costs are going to be then.
Commissioner Stump.
Yeah, Mr. Phillips, in your letter, my favorite page, A4, you did refer to the language that was part of Phase 1, where it said the town required the affordable housing to be available and or occupied prior to final occupancy issuance for the 187th market rate unit. There's a reference to the resolution. In other words, 58% of the total, 186 out of 320. Phase 1 project were allowed to be built before the town required affordable units. Is this the kind of structure that you're willing to agree to for Phase 2?
We're proposing a much more restrictive structure. If you want to offer me that deal, I will gladly take it. But
rescinded, yeah.
So yes, I mean, but like what we have requested is more restrictive than that. We're only asking to build 28% of the units before we can.
I was giving you the example of what was here.
Yes, yeah, but exactly.
Okay.
So, but I think that point of comparison is quite helpful.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rossby.
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me, and this can be lawyers or anybody, that the issue of phasing seems to be the difficult one we're struggling with here. And a lot of that could be solved if the affordable housing users were scattered throughout the development as opposed to segregated into a single structure. My question is, was that model ever considered? And if not utilized, if you could explain why it's not utilized?
Yeah, so under the current design and at the current density, it is important to have the units clustered for to access all of the financing that Dixie was talking about. In order to use tax credit financing and leverage county money and other sources, it is necessary to have them be in a single structure. You're not able to have a distributed housing model. I will say that before the town adopted the housing element, when it was still considering what should happen on the North 40, there was discussion of zoning it at a lower density, even 20 units per acre, for example. Under that model, which at the time seemed appealing to the development team, it would have been probably a townhome only development. There would have been somewhere between 200 and 300 units on the site. And there, it would have been just compliant with the town's standard below market rate program. It would have been distributed for sale at moderate incomes. With the increase of density that the town allocated when it adopted the housing element, making it go up to a minimum of 30 dwelling units per acre, to get the 450 units on the site, it was necessary to increase the density and then because that changes the cost for how you're developing, that made us look at different models of how we could deliver the affordable housing. The upside for that is that by partnering with someone like Eden Housing and clustering the units, we get more affordable housing than actually the town would ordinarily require. We beat the town's below market rate requirements by a few units here, and we're able to deliver at a lower affordability point. The town's standard requirement is for moderate income. Here we're committing to low income, and depending on the financing sources, it's quite likely that Eden ultimately will deliver very low income or even deeper affordable. So the town is going to get those harder to reach low income and potentially very low income units at a greater number because of this clustering.
Thank you for that very thorough answer. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Stump.
Just to give a point, I just have two quick questions. I want to just briefly talk about building height. I know this is one of the waivers that is being requested, setback on Los Gatos Boulevard. The North 40 specific plan calls for a setback of 50 feet for any building or portions of buildings over 25 feet located on Los Gatos Boulevard. And of course, that building is expected to be 99 feet, so well over the 25 feet. Have you considered other configurations for that apartment building, for that mixed, that multifamily mixed-use apartment building?
Yeah, I'll
just considered any other configurations as far as the property goes?
The first part of the answer is, in order to get to the required density in the housing element, we have to have the height. And the meadow, the park in the middle, was very, very important to the community when we did our community outreach. So with the park in the middle, we had to get the height to get to 30 units an acre. So that's number one. Number two, the actual height of the building on Los Gatos Boulevard is not going to be 99 feet. It's a lot lower than that because the elevation, the grade drops. If you go by the site, Los Gatos Boulevard, and then it drops onto the site. So the building is actually recessed lower. In the back, it'll be 99 feet. I think that's maybe right. I can't remember, but the front will appear to be much lower than that.
You know what that height is?
I do have an exhibit in the appendix of my presentation if we want to bring it up. Oh, I totally forgot. Our architect is here. Way better to answer this question.
Yes, we took that into consideration. So what we did was on Los Gatos Boulevard, the building portion stepped back to minimize the height. So at one corner of the building, the height from the sidewalk to the top of the parapet is 61 feet. On another portion is 71 feet. And roughly in the middle, there's an 84 feet gap, which is open to the courtyard. And that's only 1 story in height, which is 18 feet. So the 3 main building heights along Los Gatos Boulevard is 61 feet, 18 feet, that's 84 feet wide, then 71 feet. Then the building steps back. And the actual tallest portion is measured to the top of the elevator mechanical penthouse, which is facing on the other side of the street. And that's why it's so much higher, because of the grades decreasing in that area.
And I guess the reason that I brought it up is because obviously high-rise buildings in Los Gatos are a new thing, sensitivity related to it. And obviously if you've got a building that's 20 feet from basically the curb or the street, it gives you more of an urban feeling potentially than a suburban feeling, like turning and walking right into a building.
That's correct. And one clarification to that dimension, from the face of the building to the edge of the curb along Los Gatos is actually 38 feet, not 20 feet. So I'm not sure where that number came from, but it's actually 38 feet.
Not either. The The other question I just wanted to ask is follow on. This is different. It's related to density. And as you know, our attorney, the town attorney, has asked for a clarification from HCD on this gross lot area. And the gross acreage out at that site is 15.65 acres. And when this gross lot area was applied, I suppose that's where we got down to the 14.47 acres. Did people on your team arrive at that number? Was this done in concert with the town staff? How was the number of 14.47 arrived at?
Yeah, so that methodology is derived from the town code, which defines how to calculate density, and then followed the same methodology that was used for phase one. So it was developed in concert with town staff then, interpreting the code, applying the same techniques that were used in phase one, and figuring out what the density here would be. And I will point out that although there is the subtraction for what we're calling the backbone infrastructure, those streets that will serve really as public streets, all of the courtyards, the internal circulation, the parking, the open space is included in that 14.41 figure. So it does approximate a gross density figure if you're comparing it to other styles of development. So it's, I think it's more conservative even than the town's code requires, because that would allow you to subtract out all areas that are deeded for access and public. And here we're subtracting much less than that, because that is both the direction town staff provided and the way it was calculated for phase one.
And I guess it'll be good to get a confirmation from HCD that indeed is, I guess I'll say appropriate, because other technical assistants would not probably say that's the way HCD would go.
So I will acknowledge, I've certainly seen all of the comments from the Alliance that have raised the same issue. And I will say that the density bonus statute does call for calculations of density using gross acres. So what that means is that we could, if we wanted to, use the 30 dwelling unit per acre standard across the entire 15.1 and use that as our base density, and then add even more units on top of that. We would be entitled to build more. We certainly, and that is the context that HCD has given its technical advice about using gross density in other jurisdictions. It says you must allow an applicant that wants to build more to use gross density when they're using density bonus. To me, that's a different question than is the town correctly interpreting its own codes when it's not calculating a density bonus to see what the local code consistency determination is for how you've calculated density.
So did I understand you to say that then you would be open to adding additional units?
I said we'd be entitled to.
Okay. Big difference. Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one question. If we could see the slide deck, the slide your suggested changes to the conditions of approval, because I believe the letter covered these, but this is a more succinct. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. I'm just
more succinct because I wrote it, not the attorney.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I think that we just will want to be able to refer to them. So sure. I'm probably, okay. So is this was not, okay, right, because of that. Okay, I'm going to take a photo of this so that I can just look at it, if that's okay. Okay, perfect. We can, yeah, if anyone else wants to do that, just so we have access to it later. And then because we do have a number of members of the public who are currently yawning and it is getting late, I want to, we will have another opportunity to ask the applicant team any of our remaining questions. So we will be moving on to public comment. Thank you very much for all of that, if that's okay with everyone right now. Yeah, okay.
Thank you for all your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for being so thorough. So we now invite comments from members of the public. If you have not already done so, please fill out a speaker card if you're speaking here in person. If you are on Zoom, now is the time to raise your hand if you would like to make a public comment for this item. When you are called to speak, please state your name and address for the record, or state that you are speaking anonymously, and you will have 3 minutes to make your comments. The first card I have is for Catherine Mancuso. And you can adjust the microphone as needed. Thank you.
That work? Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time tonight. So what hasn't been mentioned tonight, which is near and dear to my heart, is my understanding is that some of these units are specifically designated for adults with intellectual disabilities. So that's the part that I'm interested in, and I wanted to bring a little bit of a personal shine a light on that piece and need. So my name's Catherine Mancuso. I live on Mulberry Drive in Los Gatos. My parents moved to Los Gatos in the early 50s. I grew up here. My son grew up here. And I was lucky enough to have a great career that allowed me to buy a home here, which allowed my son to be able to grow up here. So longtime resident of Los Gatos. So my son, at the meeting we came to 6 months ago, was 28. He's now 29. The longer this goes on, the less affordable everything gets. He's very high functioning. He works at Amazon. Part-time, he also works at volunteering at some of the food shelters. And he's been lucky enough to find housing affordable specifically for individuals like himself with some intellectual delay and disabilities, but it's in Santa Clara. So the great thing about that is it's given us the opportunity to really experience what that means to an individual and to a family. He's just grown exponentially with that experience. It's been, I can't speak to it enough. And I know there's been some conversation about dispersing these units throughout the entire North 40. The way it works in a lot of these developments and where my son lives in Santa Clara is it's all one unit, and that allows them to provide services to individuals, which is very, very helpful. So they have a social worker that's there on site. They have housing people on site. So if there's issues that come up between the tenant and the site, there's somebody there to help them with that. So providing services, it's really handy to have all that stuff in one place. So, the hard thing for us as parents is certainly my son's going to outlive my husband and I, and figuring out his independence and his ability to thrive weighs heavy on us every day. And his doctors are in Los Gatos, his dentist is in Los Gatos, his grandmother's in Los Gatos, his friends are in Los Gatos. And being able to live, closer to us and be able to better support him by not driving so much. He doesn't drive, so Uber expenses are high. It just would mean a tremendous amount. So really want to encourage you to move this forward as quickly as possible, and really encourage you to understand the need. He's not unique. He's got lots and lots of friends, Saratoga, Los Gatos High School grads that are very similar situation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Thank you for coming again tonight and waiting patiently. The next speaker card I have is for Ali Saperman. And you will have 3 minutes once you get up here, and I appreciate the phonetic spelling.
It asked for it, so. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Ali Saperman, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Housing Action Coalition in support of the North 40 Phase 2 project. I live in Santa Clara County, but I've been in Los Angeles for work this week, and I drove 6 hours to return to LA from LA today to be here simply for this hearing. And I say that only because of the urgency that we're facing with this project. I was disappointed about the previous delay that this project faced, given the importance this project has to the town and the entire region. North 40 turns about 15 acres of underused land into a community with 450 homes, shops, and open space. It includes 77 affordable homes on site and 1.25 acres donated to Eden Housing, an incredible partner. A fully affordable building with 67 additional homes for families earning 60% of area median income. In order to meet state regional housing needs allocation, Los Gatos has to plan for 1,993 new homes by 2031, and 847 of those must be affordable for lower and middle income households. The North 40 project makes real progress towards that goal and shows that Los Gatos is ready to take housing production seriously. In terms of density, this project delivers gentle density. This isn't a skyscraper, it's not a high rise, it fits really well with the existing neighborhoods and character. The development's walkable, sustainable, and designed to fit into the town's character. It's a great example of how Los Gatos can add homes and still protect what makes this community so special. I urge you to approve the North 40 Phase 2 project and keep moving the town closer to meeting its state housing goals and creating more homes for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any questions for the speaker? No. Thank you very much. The next speaker I have is for Noah Sklar. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Noah Sklar. I lived in Los Gatos for 28 years. I actually do not like this project at all, the whole North 1, North 2, and I disagree. The high-rise does not fit in the Los Gatos atmosphere and the flair. We're losing this town for greed and such. But with that being said, since I'm just a little person who cannot face the big events that's happening, my daughter, Romy sitting there, she's a neurodivergent. She grew up in Los Gatos, in the schools, excellent schools. She was a wrestling pro. She represented the school. And she graduated college with all her disabilities. She graduated and she's applying for a master's, but she's not ready. It's not fair that she wants to be independent. Where is she going to live? We want her nearby. She grew up here. Everything that she's familiar with is here. Why should she move to Mountain View or East San Jose when she can be here near us, close to her family? So I urge you, please, since we're already building this, allocate enough units and not a joke amount that you're offering, much more than what you're offering, for kids like my daughter, and there's tons of kids like her neurodivergent on the spectrum, what we call, living here. They might not be people that you see really quickly, meaning you're not exposed to them as much because we tend to be low-key, except me. So please move on with this project for the sake of my daughter and people like her as quickly as you can. And that's it. Let's have our kids stay near us and not venture to faraway land when they can stay in Los Gatos with what they know and what they're familiar with. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? The next card I have is for Romy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Romy Sklar. I am 23 years old, and I still live in Los Gatos, but I lived in Los Gatos my whole life, from when I was born till now. And I love living in Los Gatos. My heart's in Los Gatos. I have a lot of friends in Los Gatos, good memories in Los Gatos, my gym, my extracurricular activities, my family. And I am neurodivergent, and I faced some obstacles in school, like academics, slow processing, but I never let that stop from me. I always persevere. I want to continue persevering. and I have a lot of friends on the spectrum and other neurodiverse conditions, and who live in Los Gatos too, and they want to be independent. They still want to live in Los Gatos like me. I still want to live here, but I want to live close to my parents just so I can be more independent. I do drive, but like do grocery shopping on my own, do more independent stuff, and just be close to my parents so they could visit me, or like let's say something happens, and and also another thing is I can't afford going far, like with expensive, and I can't afford to, with the money and everything. And my neurodivergent friends want to be independent like me, but also can't afford. So please like allocate for us neurodivergent individuals to have live independently, but in Los Gatos. And I want to say, to conclude, thank you. And if there's any other thoughts, like I said, I love living here. Los Gatos is my home. Los Gatos is my heart. I went to Los Gatos High School. I graduated from Cal State East Bays with my BA in Human Development. And I want to live in Los Gatos, but live in my own, but still live close to my parents and everything. And I'm never going to give up just because I have autism and mild learning challenges. I'm not giving up. I have a lot of friends in the same boat, and they have friends. I'm social, but thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing tonight. Very much appreciate that. Do we have any question? I think there's one question.
Yeah, if I can
for you,
trouble
Romy.
you to come back to the mic. So given your comments, I infer that you support the project that's before the Planning Commission because you want to have available housing, and particularly for developmentally challenged people.
Right.
Is that correct? Your mother made reference to not liking the look of the project because of its size. I was wondering what your opinion is.
Well, personally, I have to say that I'm a firm believer that whoever really benefits and needs housing allocated, whether it's low income or people with low income or people with developmental or neurodiverse conditions, deserve to have housing because they want to be independent. They want to. It's not like they don't have, because a lot of these folks want to live independently. And I'm a believer that we should just I personally want to live independent. I still want to live in Los Gatos, but live independently.
I understand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments.
Of course, yes.
Thank you. The next card I have is for Denise Rangui. Sorry.
Good evening. So I am Denise Jauregui. I'm the Executive Director of Housing Choices, and I'm here to express my strong support for the North 40 Phase 2 project and to respectfully urge the Commission to approve this project so it can move forward. North 40 Phase 2 will provide much needed affordable housing with approximately 25% of the units designated for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are receiving services from San Andreas Regional Center, which is a state-funded agency. Housing Choices was founded 28 years ago by parents of adults with developmental disabilities who were seeking independent living options for their sons and daughters. They were seeking places and opportunities that were outside of the family home. And since then, our mission has been to open doors for people with developmental disabilities by creating and supporting quality, affordable housing options, ensuring that they're living in the communities of their choosing. The lack of access to affordable housing is the #1 reason adults with developmental disabilities are unable to move out of the family home and are at greater risk of homelessness when their aging parents and caregivers are no longer able to care for them. And in Los Gatos, there's approximately 125 people with developmental disabilities, approximately 50 of them children, and 75 are adults living in the family home. Housing Choices is also a proud partner with Eden Housing, a respected housing developer across the state. They are leading in inclusive affordable housing developments, and Housing Choices has partnered with them in 6 projects and counting, all throughout Santa Clara County. Each project is designed to provide safe, stable homes for individuals with developmental disabilities with on-site supportive services so they're able to thrive. Most recently, our collaboration with Mitchell Park Place in Palo Alto is currently in lease-up and proceeded with no delays. Additionally, all 6 developments have continued and with no delays. Eden Housing's track record is a trusted, mission-aligned developer and reinforces our shared commitment to inclusive, affordable housing. Inclusive projects like North 40 Phase 2 reflect a community where people of all abilities and backgrounds have the opportunity to thrive, and I urge you to approve this development.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you for your comments. The last speaker card I have is for Gia Pham.
Hello, everyone. So it was Halloween at the office today, so please excuse my detective attire, but I guess you could say that I came to sort of investigate, right? One of Los Gatos' toughest cases, the shortage of affordable housing for people with disabilities. My name is Gia. I'm the communications coordinator at Housing Choices, a nonprofit that helps individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities find and retain housing. First, I'd just like to address some of the claims made in the packet. So first, Los Gatos now has a certified housing element, right? So trying to use a brief period of non-compliance to undo the current certification misunderstands the law. Second, the town adopted the housing element overlay zone, and the housing element was later, again, certified. So that gives us that 30 unit density, not 20. The law requires honoring adopted zoning used to satisfy the RENA. Next, there are some arguments about builder's remedy math, but we're not even using builder's remedy right now. So debating on builder's remedy math is irrelevant. It's kind of like deciding what umbrella size to use when the raining has already stopped, right? Next, there's something that says the rejected site inventory can't be relied on. Well, no. Once the HCD certifies a housing element and the zoning is adopted, the site inventory is settled, including our North 40. So there's a lot of comments arguing HCD to reconfirm matters that are already settled by law and basic sequential logic. So the project delivers exactly what is envisioned in the current city's housing element and represents a major opportunity for Los Gatos to advance its affordable housing goals. The Phase 2 affordable housing parcel will be pad ready, allowing construction to start quickly once approved. It will achieve very low AMI affordability levels without requiring town funding. The site is also environmentally sound, not located in a flood zone or a liquefaction area, and benefits from separate sewer system. Most importantly, as many of my fellow advocates have mentioned, that 25% of the affordable units will be reserved for folks with developmental disabilities, and this is one of the few opportunities for young adults with disabilities to live independently near their families, near jobs, and near support systems. The Los Gatos Union High School District post-secondary program serves about 30 students with disabilities each year, many of whom would age out without housing options, but this would provide and satisfy such. I'd like to share a few quotes from local advocates I interviewed. One, I know people who could afford such housing if it were made available to them. Many want to become independent, but just can't afford it. Los Gatos is a pricey place, and being able to stay in the same community would be great. Please approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Pham? Yes, we have one question. Commissioner Burnett.
My understanding is that the developer is committed to 16 units for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. You mentioned 25?
25%, my bad.
Oh, 25%.
Yes.
Thank you. Now got it.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Thank you. I have no more speaker cards for people here in the chambers for this item. Are there any hands raised on Zoom? Mr. Paulson?
Yes, we have a hand raised on Zoom. Jennifer, you can unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jennifer Lucas. I'm the manager of the California State Council on Developmental Disabilities Central Coast Office. We cover 7 counties, including Santa Clara County. The council is an independent state agency established in both state and federal law, and we work to ensure that people with developmental disabilities are fully included in all aspects of their community and are afforded the same rights as all of us. So I'm here to express my strong support for the North 40 Phase 2 project. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities do face barriers in all aspects of life, in school, in employment, in accessing and receiving health care, in being part of their community, and in housing, because affordable housing options are virtually non-existent. As a result, the vast majority of people do continue to live with their aging parents. This has been reiterated countless times, and it's critical that this fact is understood. Without building affordable housing, the health, safety, and independence of people with developmental disabilities is at serious risk. The North 40 Phase 2 project offers a real solution, a local solution. It fulfills the town's approved housing element. It meets state density requirements. It creates a pad-ready site for Eden Housing to move forward efficiently once the approvals are granted, and for Housing Choices, a vendor of San Andreas Regional Center, to provide the needed supports to those with developmental disabilities who move in. Every delay or added restriction drives up the costs and pushes these long-awaited homes further out of reach for the people and the families who need them most. I strongly urge you to make Los Gatos a community that truly includes all of its residents. As Rami said, Los Gatos is her home and her heart. I respectfully encourage you to send a clear message to your residents that everyone belongs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? Are there any other hands raised on Zoom?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay. I feel like we're going to have a lot more questions for the applicant, and I know it's kind of weird to take a break now, but I feel like, is that okay or no?
Yeah, it's fine to take a break.
Okay. I mean, I think that I think we need a little stretch break. Do we want to do 10? I do want to do 10 personally. Okay. 10 minutes. We will be back in 10 minutes. Thank you all very much. And thank you for everyone that has stuck it out this far. Okay, we will now be restarting our meeting, and we are still in the public portion of our public hearing, and it is now time for the applicant team to come up and make a closing statement. I'm assuming you want to. If you don't want to make a statement, at least come up, because I'm sure we still have questions for you. And you will have 3 minutes. If you want to say anything, you do not need to use all of it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we'll respect your time. We won't take the full 3 minutes, but we did just want to thank you and the public commenters for your attention, the questions that we've already had. We do have, in addition to Steve and Dixie and myself, who you already met, we have our transportation engineer, our civil engineer, our design team. So there's lots of experts here to help answer questions that there might be about the specifics of the project, which we focused on less so far tonight than we did in our first meeting, as well as some of the inputs that went into the environmental analysis. There was one point that came up all the way back to the staff presentation that I wanted to highlight relative to the conversation about cumulative impacts. And I did want to point out that the town's environmental checklist, the initial study that the town prepared, did look at cumulative impacts. The factors for reopening a CEQA process that Commissioner Stump was talking about could involve new cumulative impacts. And that was one of the factors that the town's initial study looked at and concluded that this development would not result in a significant contribution to cumulative impacts, bearing in mind that the general plan EIR already analyzed the potential for developing 3,738 new units, and the cumulative impact of developing that amount of housing has already been thoroughly analyzed in a full EIR. So I did want to highlight that, and then also relate that to the way that the traffic analysis was done, which does include specific projects, as was discussed. And as Director Paulson mentioned, that traffic analysis does directly feed into the noise analysis, the air quality analysis, the health risk analysis, and the greenhouse gas emissions analysis that was used as the basis for the town's environmental study. So those cumulative impacts have been looked at here. With that, I think we'll leave it for any questions and respect, again, the time that focusing on the issues that you'd like to cover.
Thank you very much. Before I go to anyone else, I would like to ask a question about landscaping. Is there? I know. Sorry, I was saving this until later, which I know we talked about last time. So a little bit. Is anyone here to be able to answer? Yay. Okay, great. So I just have some questions about some of the tree species choices.
Of course, you went to the one technical consultant that I didn't list, but he is here,
okay,
so
great.
he's coming up.
I was hoping that someone would be here to be able to talk about this. So I, since you don't know me, I have my background is in environmental science and local ecology. And so I just had a couple of questions about some of the plants, especially some of the perimeter trees. So particularly the coast redwoods, which I know we even have some outside, but this area, they require the coast redwoods and the poplar that is being proposed require a lot of water to do well here. And as we know, that is becoming less and less available. So I was just wondering if there's a possibility of picking alternative trees that would require less irrigation in the long term in order to stay healthy, especially because it's going to be right next to major housing development.
Certainly open to considering that as an option. I think we chose those because they were fast growing and were endemic to the area. And so I think we were trying to just sort of speak to the landscape that exists in the region already. But yeah, happy to reconsider. There are certainly other species that are use lower water use, and we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. And then, I don't want to waste everyone's time here if this is something that is like that you're open to, but I don't know how else to end up getting things in to be made to be changed. So I'm just going to ask a couple of more questions and then maybe ask staff for advice about how to, get this moving in the direction. Because also for one of the some of the other trees, again, there's 2 different types of oaks. One of them is the coast live oak, which we have a lot of that will do great in that area, but the other is a European oak, and we have multiple other options. And I noted that, that one's probably chosen because it's an evergreen, but Canyon live oak is also an evergreen that is a similar size. So I feel like that would that be an option that you would see as viable to swap out?
I'm certainly open to that as well, and we could specify only native oak species if that's a requirement that you would like to codify. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then the one other tree that, I'm sorry, I know that this is like my thing, you guys. It's my trees. I know. Okay, the one other tree that I see that is a little bit problematic is there's like some magnolias, and they can be like also very destructive to infrastructure and cause problems like with maintenance overall with, so I would just, if that's a possibility to swap those out for something else that is not, that does better with drought, is more drought tolerant and does not do as much damage with its roots to the infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Okay. So seeing that everyone seems to be somewhat amenable to that, I guess I would ask your team and staff what would be the best route for making some recommended changes.
Our staff recommendation would be to add a condition of approval that addresses the landscaping.
Okay.
And so far, it would consist of saying that all oaks will be replaced with native oak species, and all magnolias will be replaced with drought-tolerant trees that don't damage infrastructure.
Okay. That sounds, yes.
We're very amenable to that. Potentially the only friendly amendment I would hope is that say that if the condition of approval were added, we'd say that we would work with staff to finalize the plant palette that accomplishes what the town attorney just said, just so there's an end point to how that decision gets made.
Yes. Okay, that sounds great. Also from the town, I'll answer your question, Susan, in a second, or I'll let you speak in a second. If this does not continue tonight and it is no longer in front of us, what is there if I wanted to give the applicant team the feedback, because that would be more prescriptive in a way that then they could present later on when they go through, you know what I mean? So just to create not extra work, is that not something that is allowed, or because once it's gone from us and not going to be back here? Or no?
If the commission's interested in imposing a requirement, I would recommend adding it to the conditions of approval.
Okay. And then beyond the requirement, just if I had a couple of other suggestions that I think would be would save money and water and be more appropriate in the long run.
If the commission has suggestions only, those could be made verbally at this meeting.
Yes, but I mean, would it be legal for me after it's gone from planning commission for me to just email them with the change, the other changes that I thought would be?
My recommendation would be that the recommendations come from the full commission, and so you would want to make sure that anything you were proposing to the applicant had been agreed to by the other commissioners.
Okay.
So I think tonight would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll summarize them, and then we can discuss it at the end of all of our other things if we want. So I can make them clear, we can make it all clear. Susan did have something related to that. Sorry, Commissioner Burnett.
Thank you. So the trees that are on the perimeter Highway 17 Phase 1, are you recommending, I don't know what trees they are, but they're very slow growing and it's going to be forever before they sort of hide what's behind them, let's say. So Are you recommending those same trees for phase 2? Because they're not a fast-growing tree. They're not a
To be
big...
honest, I'm not entirely sure what
Okay,
was
thank
planted
you.
in the phase 1 plans. Check what we specified.
I could ask our chair if she's familiar with those
The
trees.
ones that are there right
Phase-
now?
Yeah. I would just recommend that we have something different that they're not doing the job they need to do. Chair, do we want to come back to this? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we can ask some other questions and then we can come back to the trees later. Perfect. Yes, Vice Chair Birch, and then I'll get to Commissioner Stump.
Okay, thank you. Mine are not about trees. I do have more of a like kind of more procedural question that I think would probably pertain more to you if you want to come back up while they're looking to find the trees.
I pulled it up. And,
you did?
And
we can wait a
luckily
second then. It's fine. Like,
okay,
go ahead.
Yeah. So the ones that we had around the perimeter were the redwoods and the poplars, and those are going to be replaced. And so perhaps as part of the language to adjust those, we could add fast growing to that category as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I kind of wanted to go back to a bit of the conversation about the, building when we build some of the affordable units. But my first question was a bit more of understanding about how you guys work and how you structure a project. So as you make it through this project or process, and once the project is entitled, do you then sell that, or does Grosvenor maintain control over the construction all the way through to that point?
It depends on the project, and we're not entirely sure how this one will occur. We, on phase 1, for instance, we got through the entitlements with Summerhill, and then Summerhill took over as they were our partner through it, and then they took over the work. That could happen here with the townhome component, where we bring in a partner to build the townhomes. Grosvenor has built townhomes before, but it's not our total expertise, so we like to bring in an expert to do that. Our expertise is more in the multifamily sector, so that's really our bread and butter is the multifamily rental. But we haven't really figured out yet. Once we get entitled, then we'll go about finding the best partners and figure out how to best go forward.
Okay. Can I ask a couple follow-ups really quick? Okay. Okay, thank you. That kind of helps. Sure. When you had brought up the slide earlier and you were taking a look at some of the infrastructure costs and everything, so that's usually done as one package. Does Grosvenor oversee that level of utilities and infrastructure and then perhaps sell it off?
Again, we have done both, where we will build the backbone infrastructure and sell finished lots to a builder or partner with a builder on finished lots. There are cases where a builder would rather do it themselves, so we would partner with builder to do that work. So we've done both.
Okay. Well, all right. So we took a look at that slide, and you were kind of estimating some high-level costs just for the infrastructure required for the price or for the whole lot. I should just slow down. One of the things that's noted in here in sort of trying to figure out the timing, right, of what you need to build to make the affordable viable is that without building this 127, it really makes the other not viable. So Obviously, $100 million in infrastructure costs is not just for the affordable, that's for the entire site. So I'm trying to understand on our side as we take a look at how we're going to structure this. How do I understand what makes this 127 the magic number, and why without that, then basically most of this is not viable? Like, how do you help me understand that so that we structure this?
So another way of saying, summarizing what the town's proposal is, the town's essentially saying through concurrent development of affordable with market rate, they're essentially saying you have to build Eden Building first. So that one would have to go first, which means Eden would have to build all the infrastructure, right? So that's not feasible. The 127 townhomes will be used to finance the costs to build the infrastructure. So let's just say, go to a bank and you say, I'm going to borrow money to go build the infrastructure. They want to know that you can pay off the loan. So how do you do that? Well, you say, I pledge 127 lots. I'm going to build those once I build the infrastructure and sell them. I will have money to pay the loan down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So then if you're saying, oh, which makes sense, right? Like I need to get some cash flow in to do this work, right? If at that point building these concurrently isn't ideal, I would recommend to help, or what I would like to see then is instead we start looking at a completion date for the affordable. I assume as you look at what cash flows you're looking at, costs, there's some level of milestone schedule that's been developed for all of this for you. And usually you're going to probably want to build from the back to the front so you're not damaging and redoing work that you've already done and you're not driving a dump truck through somebody's parking lot. When you look at that kind of level, I would have to assume there's at least a general idea of when you would prefer to have that completed. If we could talk that through, rather than saying we want this to be done concurrently, could we put into the conditions of approval, this is a date to have this affordable housing built?
Yeah, so a date certain is a guarantee. We cannot guarantee when anything's going to be built. I can't guarantee when the infrastructure is going to be built, townhomes, apartments. There's no guarantees in our business. I mean, any developer would say that. So that's why we can't agree to a date, because that is essentially a guarantee.
Okay, that answers my question.
Commissioner Stump.
I'd like to go back to your slide on affordable housing condition of approval. I've just got a couple of questions on your bullet items. I don't know, Sean, if you want to bring that back up again. Probably know exactly which slide it is by now. I'm looking down at the fourth bullet point. It says if the multifamily, I'm just trying to understand at this point in time, if the multifamily building is commenced before the affordable housing lot, 17% of the total units within the multifamily building, again, assuming 255 units, as far as the denominator, shall be provided as BMP units until milestones are met. If my math is correct, that pencils out to 43 units.
Sort of. So here's the issue. Here's what's different about it is what we're proposing is whatever's built to that point.
I understand.
We would so if there are townhomes built and we start the multifamily, we would contain 17% of what has been built to date. So it's actually could be higher than that.
So townhomes, because I'm not, it doesn't really say that though here on the bullet point. But I understand what you're saying. There would be townhomes and the multifamily.
And you're right. It doesn't say it on the summary, but if you look at the density bonus request that we submitted, it's in the packet. It's page 79 and 80 of the original packet, has the specific condition of approval language written out with all of those
I appreciate that. That's helpful. I got a question on bullet point 6. Grosvenor's proposed affordable housing timing meets state housing law requirements and provides the town with adequate security for affordable housing delivery. What do you consider to be adequate security?
Well, it's all the mechanisms that we were discussing before. The security is as we were talking about, although the 127 original townhome units are sufficient to help finance the infrastructure, they're not sufficient to make Grosvenor whole for the entirety of the project. And so Grosvenor is incentivized to finish the project by building the multifamily building, and it can't do that until it delivers the affordable housing either in partnership with Eden on their parcel or in the multifamily building. So that secures the delivery of that affordable housing before the bulk of the market rate units can be delivered to the project.
And again, I'm the guy that keeps coming back and using the word guarantee. And of course, we know there are no guarantees in life, right? So bottom line, what really nails this down is a guarantee that the affordable units will be built. And again, I realize your worst case is kind of like, hey, it could take 10 years, right? That property could sit there vacant for some period of time. People are getting discouraged, and it's kind of like, well, it just didn't happen. How do we actually ensure that it will happen? What's the partnership there?
Yeah, well, again, we heard Dixie from Eden Housing describe their time frame being potentially as short as 3 years if the financing all works. That's certainly the model that we're working towards. But as Steve has said, even the townhomes, we're not guaranteeing that we're going to be able to build those. It's all very market dependent. So at this point, there are no guarantees that any aspect of the project will be able to be started or completed. But once the construction starts and that money has been spent on the infrastructure, there is a huge financial incentive to complete the project. So that's what creates that. Again, it's not a guarantee, but it is a very strong financial incentive and a commitment to finishing the project.
Can I ask one more question of Eden Housing? It was very encouraging to hear what you're talking about as it relates to, I guess I'll call it your market and where you operate. How do you see the climate going forward in that market? Is it positive? What's your forecast?
It is actually positive. We gained, well, it won't sound like a lot, but 50 basis points in perm debt with a slight decrease in the interest rates. And so you don't really see that in single-family home ownership, but you do see a big, huge move of the needle when you're talking about 78 homes and multi-million-dollar project. That is significant. 50 basis points overnight on a 200-unit project that I'm modeling up gave us another $5 million. So I'm like, hey, let's keep that going. So the interest rates are running in the right direction. It's still, the jury is still out on what the tax credit equity can be right now, but I can tell you that among our other peers, Eden Housing statewide has been getting the most cents on the dollar from our equity investors. And a lot of that has to do with our history, our stability. We were just rated, S&P 500 rated company, and that is rare for a nonprofit to get rated like that. So that has definitely increased our star power with the big institutional investors who already gave us top dollar for our credits. So, you know, it's a long-winded way of saying never give the microphone to a developer. It looks really good, it really does, and historically the affordable housing community has done quite well in economic factors like this. It will do even better once Steve can get his market rate project going. But we are very encouraged that we had a very, very busy 2025, and 2026 looks very insane for us as well. We were just awarded $75 million from the state of California for 5 of our projects, the most that any developer has gotten in the state of California. And so that will push much more of our projects from dream into reality and shovel set. So we are nimble, we are ready to go, and we are poised to take advantage of the market.
Thank you.
Dixie said one other thing in the first response to questions about the increase in tax credit allocation that's coming. I'm loath to invoke national politics these days, but the one potential benefit of the recent tax and infrastructure reform that was adopted earlier this year is that there was an increased commitment to tax credits and a significant increase in allocation to tax credits that will be available for housing development in California. So as much uncertainty as there is in the world, that's actually one bright spot and an encouraging market signal that there's going to be even more resources than there has been historically for building going forward.
Thank you, everyone, for being patient. Commissioner Burnett?
Yes, thank you. So for the Eden, I mean, you have such a great voice, you're so knowledgeable. And because affordable housing is such a big issue here, and we sort of don't, I don't know, the questions aren't quite being answered for me, but is there any way you could step up? I mean, because you do major projects, is there any way Eden Housing could help with the infrastructure or take a lead and start your, your building, your 66 units to help sort of get this going a little quicker and give the town a little more satisfaction that this will take place?
Really good question, and it's a question that I asked probably about 6 months ago. How much would it cost for us to build and really just have our own destiny? And those dollars are really, really significant. It would add probably, I would say, $12 million to the cost of the affordable housing project. So that's $12 million. That does a couple of things. Number one, it increases the cost of the development, which, remember when I talked to you about keeping the cost of the development as low as we possibly could to keep ourselves competitive. Anything that drives up cost is going to drive that competitiveness down. Not an impossibility, it just drives it down. It also means that we're going to have to go out and have some bake sales, right? There's some real huge economic challenges with our county. We know the county is out of Measure A dollars, right? We know that there's very little dollars coming in from the state next year. We know our state budget looks pretty bleak. What doesn't look bleak is our tax credits. And so what we've got to do is keep those costs low. But then in the dream scenario to how can I finance our own projects, we simply can't. And that is because we can't get the NOI high enough to be able to afford carrying that kind of debt load, if you will, on a project that will have restricted rents.
Thank you.
I'm going to get Commissioner Sorty and then Commissioner Burnett.
I think a question maybe for Steve. Just kind of sitting here thinking about the condition, I think, as it's written now, and I think it basically says on the town side, condition 6 applies 17% to any of the units. So presuming the townhomes go first, the question to you would be, how would a townhome developer that's going to buy that parcel from you go about underwriting that and calculating? How would you calculate, or they calculate, sort of the hit to the project and what the sort of financial impact would be to that?
If we were to consider building affordable townhomes, is that your question?
Yes, and part of it is, and I'm thinking as I go, the awkwardness of having to convey to them the very possibility that these would only need to be affordable for a while, and that the affordable component might evolve its way to another phase of the project. Seems a little awkward. I just don't know how they would account for that when they value it.
We're not proposing to we're not proposing that any of the townhomes would ever be deemed affordable. Because it's a for sale product, you couldn't do it. So we're proposing all 127 will be market rate. It's the multifamily rental building that we would contain affordable in if we needed to before Eden started.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm just trying to get at is, well, and it's a little bit of a difficult question, but the way I think the condition is worded now, you would be obligated, if you had to live with the condition and we impose that condition on you, of somehow trying to figure out how to push a 17% affordable component into this 127 townhome
Yeah, so
project.
that would be 22 of the units. So take us down to 105 market rate units. But it basically, and Steve can maybe give even a more precise number, but it basically wipes out the value. Like those become zero value units at that point. You're lucky if you can recover your construction costs. Some of them might be negative value. So it is a direct reduction from 127 units down to 105 units. And as Steve was talking about before, that then directly affects the viability of being able to adequately finance the infrastructure, because we'll have almost 20% of fewer units that can be used as collateral to repay that debt and finance the infrastructure for the project.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up. So there would be no way to convey to the ultimate buyer of those townhomes that, and I know it sounds like a weird question, but it's the way the condition's worded, that they would have to live with the 17% affordable component and rent that percentage of those units, but then ultimately, I don't know, kick the renters out when the affordable component moves on to a different phase of the project and that's operated by somebody else.
No, we talked about that as a so you're right. I mean, that is literally the mechanics of that. Potentially, a townhome builder would choose to hold back 20% of its project, then operate as a landlord, rent that out, and evict those tenants, then sell previously occupied low-income units to try and recapture the value on that. And again, it's just not a model that we think will viably allow us to build. So the practical implications of that is why we're so concerned with the viability of the project going forward if that condition is implemented as currently written.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
No. Commissioner Barnett?
Yeah, I have two questions. Apparently, the current staff report does not include a condition that the 16 units reserved for intellectual and developmentally disabled persons will be constructed. And I assume that that's an obligation that you would agree to include in the conditions?
Yes, we are prepared to see that incorporated into the conditions of approval, that up to 25% of the units within the 100% affordable building can have a dedicated preference for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, just to make sure that we're complying with fair housing laws and how that's marketed. But that memorializing that commitment in the conditions of approval, we're very comfortable with.
Just one follow-up question. I understood the proposal to be at least 25%. Is it 25% or up to?
25%. I'm sorry. Yeah, I said up to, but you're right. I misspoke. At 25%. Thank you.
And then this may be self-evident, but I assume that the applicant is in agreement with all of the conditions set out in paragraphs 3 through 6 of the staff report related to the BMP, and that's on pages 27 to 30.
You know, I thought I'd memorized the entire staff report, but I have to actually look at what paragraphs 3 through 6 are. But I will say, with the exception of the one condition where we've requested the density bonus concession, we are comfortable with the conditions of approval, with every other condition of approval that's in the packet. So it is.
It was just the phasing.
Correct. So there was the one condition where we proposed our own wording as part of our density bonus concession, but every other commitment and obligation in the conditions we are comfortable with.
Thanks. Those are my questions.
Commissioner Stump?
If I could, I just want to confirm the math because I'm not confused, I believe, because you said that 17% of total units, including townhomes and the multifamily building, would be subject to housing affordable units for some temporary period of time. And so if my math is correct, I think we heard the number already, but that would be 22, call it credits from the townhomes, and then 43 from the apartments. So it looks like the max figure would be 65
It
units.
could even be 66 due to rounding,
Okay.
but yes,
Okay.
you-
All right.
we're looking at the same
I'll
figures.
take it. Thank you.
Okay, are there? No other questions? Okay, will you have a question? Yeah, Commissioner Burnett?
Can we have questions for staff?
Yeah,
now,
well,
or
we can, yeah, for the applicant team. Okay, I would just like to follow up with some of my plants to make sure that it's like amenable, and then we'll figure it out for the motion if there is one later. Is that okay? Okay, so for the trees, there's like perimeter, orchard, common space trees, and street trees, like kind of there's like clumped in different categories. So we already kind of talked a little bit about the perimeter trees. And then for the common open space and orchard trees, would you prefer, are you guys comfortable with removing any of the ones that are not native and replacing them with natives?
Sure,
Native
absolutely.
trees? Okay. And then there's like most of the shrubs and perennials are a mix of significantly like drought tolerant things, but there is one that's invasive, the butterfly bush. I know it's really beautiful and it's confusing that it's invasive, but it can be. So are we comfortable with asking for that not to be planted?
Sure, we can swap that out for another
something
pollinator
else.
species.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Okay, I think that I have enough information I appreciate and look forward to it. To seeing some big trees there if this happens. Okay, Susan, yes.
Yep. I have a question again for the facade on Los Gatos Boulevard. I know you went over the setbacks, and initially I was thinking it's going to be 20 feet versus 50 that we would like. So when you were describing it, it sounded like there's going to be step backs of different. Could you just go over that again? Because that's quite.
Yeah, if you can pull up that diagram in the appendix again.
Yeah, and do you have a rendering to that?
Well, there's a roof plan that shows the heights and the step backs.
Because I know we have now a building that is 15 feet setback, and it looms on Los Gatos Boulevard. So the idea of a building.
Yeah, so at the bottom of the page is Los Gatos Boulevard, and C5 Street is on the right side. And starting from the left, the building has multiple setbacks at the top of the building. The lowest pieces are at 61 feet height, stepping up to 71 feet 2, and then 82 feet. In the middle, there's this 84 feet space open to the courtyard. That zone is 18 feet in height. Then the remainder, which is about 207 feet long, is 71 feet height. And that's measured from the sidewalk to the top of the roof parapet.
I'm talking about the setback from the sidewalk or from the street.
So that dimension from the face of the building at the ground floor to the street curb is 38 feet. And that really complies with the objective design standards for setbacks for the buildings.
I understand that. You're asking for a waiver, though, on that. I mean, I understand it is an objective, and
Yeah,
you
but that
have
was
the right to
for-
ask for that, but it's also
So the true dimensions is 38 feet, and we are, from a landscaping standpoint, putting a lay of trees in that zone to create a landscape buffer between the street and the building itself, along with the sidewalk. The existing grades, there's actually a berm, and the side slopes, if Los Gatos is at 0 elevation, the side slopes downward about 6 or 7 feet to the area facing the open space. And there's a sort of a kind of a swale, if you think about it, that slopes down. So the building actually doesn't come across to touch the sidewalk. There's actual slope down into the site, which helps to create an additional buffer for pedestrians and so forth. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Rossby?
Thank you. I'm sorry, sir, before you sit down, do we have elevations of what the building will look, the facade will look like from the Los Gatos Boulevard side?
There should be perspectives, renderings of, there it is, yeah. So that's where you can see that 84-foot zone between the two building masses. That's the building height is 18 feet, which is basically a 1-story. And that's where the open space courtyard with pool amenities face onto Los Gatos Boulevard. On the left side, there's the paseo. That's the pedestrian passage that connects to the major open space meadow in the center of the phase 2. And lined with it is ground level commercial restaurant uses, along with surface parking, which you don't see, and another commercial building off to the left of the image. So that paseo will be lined with commercial and restaurant uses heading down toward the open space. What we've also done is created cantilevered balconies that are recessed and protruding outward to create additional variations in the massing, various uses of different materials to break up the building facades, and also 2-story window expressions to visually lower the building height, along with, and this is also where you can see the array of trees that will help buffer visually the building with Los Gatos Boulevard.
Thank you, sir. That's very helpful.
Any other questions at this time before we close the public portion of this hearing? Are we sure? Oh, Commissioner Stump, no, you do have, you're not sure. You do have a question? Okay. Okay. We will now thank you very much for answering all of our questions and for all being here. And we will now close the public portion of this public meeting. And I invite commissioners to ask questions of staff and provide some comments and propose some sort of motion at some point. Okay. I will start with Commissioner Barnett and then Commissioner Sorty.
Thank you. So a question for staff is the town's position with respect to the points made by the Community Alliance letter to HCD dated October 26th. And potentially a response to that could be agreement with the points raised by Mr. Phillips in his email yesterday, Exhibit 30.
Is the question whether HCD is more likely to agree with the town or with the Alliance versus Mr. Phillips?
My question is, what is the staff's position with respect to the points made in the Community Alliance letter to HCD?
Oh, okay. And so would you like to go through each point individually?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Not too burdensome for you. Appreciate
okay.
that.
Do you have the page number?
Let's see. Well, it's an email from yesterday, as I recall. That's it. Do we have a page number or just for the addendum?
Addendum from addendum number 1. Just page exhibit 27. Do we all have, we're all good now? We all have it? Okay.
Okay, so my understanding of the first point is it is saying that the project should be evaluated against the town's prior 20 units per acre standard as opposed to the 30 units per acre standard that's in the currently adopted housing element. And the reason for this position is that the housing element that was adopted by the town January 30th, 2023 was not certified by the state until June of 2024. And so I believe it's the Alliance's position that the town should not be relying on a housing element that was not certified by HCD. And it's my opinion that there is a distinction between certification by HCD, which is a prerequisite for avoiding the builder's remedy, as opposed to the town's adoption of a housing element. And it's my position in consultation with outside counsel that once the housing element was adopted by the town, it became law. So does that answer the question on number 1?
It does, thank you.
Okay. And then point number 2 is that HCD has indicated that it may wait to provide assistance on the questions that have been posed to HCD until after the Planning Commission meeting, which is clear that that happened. And the letter points out that that's of concern because SB 330 limits the town to 5 public hearings on an SB 330 project, and this will be the town's second public hearing on this project. I think my comment on that would be the town is not in a position to force HCD to respond or to force HCD to respond within a certain time frame. And to that end, you know, that's why I'm offering a legal opinion, and that's why I've consulted with the law firms of Goldfarb Littman and Jarvis Fay, and they're available tonight if you have additional questions. And then the point number 3 is stating that town staff has misstated the choice between housing element density and baseline zoning. And the letter states that baseline zoning is 20 dwelling units per acre, allowing this applicant to use the housing element that was adopted that provides for 30 dwelling units per acre while using 28 units per acre for other projects is unlawful. And I'll defer to Joel, but my understanding is that we are using 30 units per acre for all projects that vested to the 30 units per acre in the adopted housing element as of January 30th, 2023. I think there is one project where 20 units per acre was used in error. And so, but it is the town's position that it should be 30 units per acre. Then the second part of question number 3 also relates to the 30 dwelling units per acre baseline. And it's discussing that 20 dwelling units per acre should be used. However, it's town staff's position that the housing element took effect on the date that it was adopted, which was January 30th, 2023. Then the third part of point number 3 is there's an invalid reliance on the site inventory for suitability. The town asserts the North 40 sites were identified as suitable under section 65589.5 because they appear in the rejected January 2023 inventory. I think this is asking the same question in a similar way. Was the housing element that was adopted on January 30th, 2023 effective? And it's town staff's position in consultation with outside counsel that it took effect when it was adopted. The fourth point discusses harm if HCD does not act before tonight's hearing. And it discusses the 30 dwelling units per acre again. And then it mentions that the town should not be relying on the site inventory that was in the January 30th, 2023 housing element. It's town staff's position that that housing element took effect when it was adopted. And then the fifth point is requesting that the Planning Commission have the benefit of HCD's opinion on these questions.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Stump?
Just to follow up on this, and maybe it's none of my business because it's the state's business. Do they get to pick and choose who they respond to?
We have been in touch with HCD, and they indicated that they step in when they feel that they can be of assistance. And so they indicated that they were curious to see how the town's hearings would go, and then they would make a decision on whether or not to issue an opinion.
That's a really frustrating answer because it's almost like a game of chicken. You know, who's going to flinch first? Go ahead, you go first, and we'll see if we like what you did, and then maybe we'll consider responding, or maybe we'll respond because we don't like what you did. So it's a frustration on my part. Sorry to voice that.
Commissioner Swarty?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question on Grosvenor's condition of approval, the affordable housing condition, and their proposal. And I think they tried to touch on it a little bit, but I was hoping to hear from staff. It says we offered, but the town declined, that we transfer the finished infrastructure serving the affordable housing lot to the town, if not commenced within 10 years, but it was rejected or declined, whatever. I was just curious to know why the town would decline that offer.
I do recall that discussion, and the town doesn't have anyone on staff who, would have the ability to get an affordable housing project built there. It's just not in the town's wheelhouse. And, kudos to Eden Housing. It's just very difficult to get affordable housing built, and so it's better off in the hands of an expert.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Stump?
I'm calmed down. My question would be around this condition of approval. What is the best way at this point to proceed? It just doesn't seem like we should sit around the table and throw our ideas in and come up with, conditions of approval. What would staff recommend as the way to proceed on this?
One way to proceed would be to stick with the staff recommended condition of approval that requires the 17% throughout, but also direct staff to continue talking with the applicant about other alternatives. If staff's proposal seems too restrictive, another alternative would be to go with the applicant's proposal, but put a deadline on construction of the multifamily apartment building, because right now there's no timeline on that. And so those would probably be two ways that the commission could move forward.
Commissioner Rossby?
Thanks, Chair. I don't have any questions, but I can start by throwing some thoughts out there, if that's acceptable. First of all, I want to thank everybody for appearing tonight. Half of the chambers left because of the late hour, but it's clear that this project has inspired a lot of community thought, especially on the issue of affordable housing. So thanks to all for coming out. Per my notes and per staff report, I think there are 4 issues really presented. First, having to do with CEQA, and that is, and I'm going to defer to better minds than I. I understand we're relying on the 2040 General Plan EIR. I'm also understanding that as part of the EIR or environmental process for this project, cumulative impacts were examined, and those were reasonably foreseeable projects. So I take comfort in that the CEQA portion of this project has been satisfied. Similarly, no net loss is issue number 2, and I understand that this project will implicate certain no net loss issues, and as a town, we're going to have to find a way through that. I find it to be unavoidable, but I think as a town we have to acknowledge it. It leads us then to the 2 big issues, that is concessions and waivers. And on this point, I'm going to respectfully disagree with council. I don't think we have yet agreement about the building of affordability, and I think that's largely why we're having this hearing tonight, to see if we can reach agreement on that issue, which would then trigger the waivers and concessions. So the first concession, I think, to me, is a no-brainer, the elimination of the ground floor retail and townhomes. It makes no sense to me to have that portion of the project in there. There should be 100% building, so I think that concession is a given. The deviation from the town's below market rate program, which will require everything to be built concurrently, that's the big one, and obviously that's what we're talking about tonight. And before we came here tonight, I was a firm believer in a concurrent model, that is, everything had to be built at the same time. But again, part of sitting up here is we have to listen to experts and those who have subject matter expertise. And I think we've heard that tonight between Eden Homes and others. It seems to me that the town's model does not work in this situation. That is, we have to find something alternative. And as I sit here tonight and talk to others, I think the developer's proposal that we have before us on the 17% structure is probably the best we can do. As Commissioner Stump said, I don't think it's our job to come up with and brainstorm perhaps better ideas. That's not our business. This one seems to be a reasonable model with the proviso, as indicated by town attorney, that there be a deadline for the construction of the townhomes. I think if we can agree to that concession, then we have an agreement on affordable housing, and then the concessions and the waivers would trigger, which would then trigger the last 2 issues, the waivers of the setbacks and the heights. And again, I was really concerned about that. 100 feet sounds really tall on Los Gatos Boulevard. Having seen the renderings tonight and the way the facade is broken up, it's not a flat wall, it's setback, there's colors, there's textures, there's windows, there's openings, there's landscaping. I'm less concerned about the structure as it's currently presented. So to me, those are the 4 issues. I think that's the way I see the resolution of them, that I would recommend the project proceed to Town Council with these changes, specifically to the housing condition of approval. Chair, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. When you say the 17%, do you mean adjusting it to what?
The proposal here is indicated.
Or what is in the current conditions of approval?
No. I would not include the current conditions of approval. I would include the condition of approval that the 17% be incorporated into the market rate buildings until such time as we reach the thresholds and they roll out.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, Vice Chair Birch and then Commissioner Burnett.
Okay, just actually clarification then too. And you're saying then as part of that, there's a deadline of construction related to that?
I believe Town Council recommended that if we were to consider this proposal, that incorporated therein be a deadline for the construction of the multifamily. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how do we determine what that would be?
If the commission wanted to, it could reopen the public portion of the hearing to hear from the applicant on that issue.
Okay.
Because I don't have a good sense of what sort of timeline would be realistic.
Was that issue
Not yet.
We
discussed
floated
with-
the idea of a 3-year deadline from the date of pulling the first building permit. And the applicant, at the time we discussed it, that wasn't workable for the applicant, but it'd probably be worth discussing with the applicant this evening.
Thank you.
So what happens if that date goes by, though? Okay, I just would like to understand how is this enforced?
Then no more, it depend how it was structured, but it could be no more building permits would be issued or no more certificate of occupancies would be issued.
Okay.
Or both.
Commissioner Burnett?
I would move to reopen the public hearing to receive input from Grosvenor with respect to the proposed time limit for the building of the multifamily.
Do I need to get a second for that? And is that a real, or can we just open it if?
The chair can open it.
Okay. Can I just clarify a few things so that we can make sure that we're like specific with the question? I just would like us to look at the difference between this and the current condition of approval, because I think those are kind of like, I think that those are our two main options at the moment. So I would just like to do that and give them the opportunity to, weigh the difference between those. So can we go to page?
To that end, I recommend looking at the letter from the applicant because I think what was put on the PowerPoint was a summary of their proposal, and I think it would be good to look at the actual language of the proposal. And so I'm looking for that in the staff report right now, and I'll.
It's in exhibit 24, page 2.
Thank you.
Attachment to that.
Okay. Thank you.
You said exhibit 24, page 2?
Correct. After the letter, there's an attachment. And so page 2 starts, at the end, there's a beginning of modified conditions that were proposed. I believe that's still the most recent version.
Can you confirm the date? Oh, there you go. Thank you. Can you make that larger? Yeah.
And the portion that kind of references the 17% begins at the last bullet on page 3 and then continues on to page 4, where it outlines those triggers.
Okay, so let's look, can we look at then also, can we all just kind of go back to the current conditions of approval, which are on page where this would change, you know, which one would actually change? And I believe there's a lot, so we can find it. Which number do we know?
Condition 6 of Exhibit 23, I believe.
Like page
It'd be page 28 of the PDF.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so page 28. I think that we just have a quick question about the remaining affordable for 55 years. Where does the 55 years come from? Just curious.
I believe it comes from state law.
State law, okay. Okay, so I think that what the commission is weighing at the moment is keeping 6 like as is, asking the applicant if they prefer 6 as is or their proposed change with some sort of date. Not necessarily a date, but some sort of date after something, which can be some period of time and then also with some, you know, explanation of what happens after that. So does anyone have any additional comments? Those are, okay. So that is, we would like to reopen the public comment to ask that question. Would you, as an applicant team, prefer to keep condition 6 as is, or would your preference be to change to the language you preferred, but with an additional stipulation? I think the mic is off because we closed public comment, maybe, or.
Sean, can you check the battery? Make sure it's not dead.
Oh, that's the problem. Here, you can have mine. You want to be the chair? Okay. No, it's okay.
I promise I'm not trying to filibuster you. I talked so much I killed your mic. So we've already spoken about our concerns with the concurrency requirement. I'm not going to rehash those. I think we also have similar concerns with the hard construction start deadline for the same reasons that Steve has already described. So that's not something that we're in a position that we could agree to here tonight. I would say, since you asked our preference, out of those two choices, probably would still prefer to keep then the condition of approval the way town staff has written it. We'll continue to discuss with them, but then present this issue again to the town council for additional deliberation, because either construct, as we've been discussing it tonight, we have serious concerns about what that would mean for the viability of the project.
Okay. Are there any clarifying questions that we need answered related to that? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So we will now close the public comment period again. And I just want to say that I know that like everyone in this room is on the same page that we want like this affordable housing done. And so I just want to say that I really appreciate it because it's been a big effort and a big lift to get this to this point for everyone here. So that being said, it is a, it's just difficult to, because of the type of project, it just seems a little bit difficult to make the finding about the agreement to allow the concessions, to grant the concessions because that is tied to the affordable housing and then part of it happening before. It's, it's not as black and white as we all wish it could be, which is understandable because it's a big, well-planned, multi-layered project. So that being said, I appreciate the willingness to continue to, try and talk to staff and possibly whether we, make a motion, whatever our motion is tonight, to continue that conversation with staff so that we can like come together and the project can happen if, it seems fit and like the affordable housing is a part of it. So Commissioner Sorty and then Commissioner Barnett.
Yeah, just a quick question, I guess, from a technical standpoint. So what I heard the applicant say, I think, is that they're okay with the condition as it reads right now, the way staff has written it. So we would be able to make the finding because the condition stays in place. Would they technically be appealing that condition, accepting the approval or accepting the recommendation from the Planning Commission and then appealing that condition to the council? I don't know. Just want to clarify.
Thank you. So the action this evening is a recommendation whenever the commission decides to make a recommendation. So it's not an appeal. It just moves forward with the recommendation to the town council.
So just to follow up on that, we can recommend further discussion of a condition, make the findings subject to recommendation of a potential modification to condition 6 to be determined later.
I can start and then the town attorney can jump in, but I think the applicant was fairly clear. Given the choice, they prefer to go forward with the conditions as written, which are also align with the findings as written from what I recall. So then they would be choosing to have further conversation with council. Planning Commission's action would be taken.
And I think that, I think that town council would have, gotten our minutes, heard this discussion and, heard enough about how we felt in order to modify that condition moving forward if necessary, if there is an agreement or an alternative on the table. But I think that it would be helpful for them if before we make a motion right now, we discuss things that we prefer or not so that they can make a clear decision. I mean, they know what we support. Okay, so who wants to talk about that? Okay, sorry, Commissioner Barnett.
I would like to make a motion so that we can have further discussion in the context of that. And I'm going to make that motion at this time. Let's see. Starting with staff, the requests and approvals that are included in the notice of this hearing, is it adequate to refer to those by reference rather than repeating them?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so with respect to the matters noted on the agenda, item 1 for this meeting, I move to recommend to the town council to approve each of the requests and applications that are noticed and detailed in Exhibit 22 on page 21 of the staff report. I can make all of the findings and considerations set out in Exhibit 22 on pages 22 to 25 of the staff report, including the concessions, incentives, and waivers, with the exception of the finding relating to the denial of the state density bonus law and the State Housing Accountability Act, being items 1 through 4 inclusive on pages 23 and 24, and instead approve the concession that the BMP units shall be constructed in building permits and certificates of occupancy secured so that at all times, at least 17% of the residential units with building permits and certificates of occupancy are lower income BMP units.
It sounds like you're making a motion to approve the finding as they are proposed by the staff. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The motion would including a covenant or condition in the staff's rendering of the condition final draft, that include a covenant that the 16 units dedicated to persons with intellectual or other developmental disabilities be recorded prior to the issuance of the first building permit. I know that we've got that submitted down with the developer, but we can discuss that. And okay, and then the next one would be with respect to the landscaping, that the developer consider alternative trees with less water requirements, including native oak trees and an alternative to the magnolias, and work with staff on the final language for that, and that the common space and orchards must be native and no butterfly plant. Okay, so we've got that. The motion is based on the approved findings noted above, and that the applicant has provided sufficient proof by the preponderance of the evidence that the below market units will be built. This includes the acceptance of conditions 5 and 6, again shown on pages 28 to 29 of the staff report, which required the applicant to enter into an affordable housing agreement providing for the 10 BMP units to be constructed in building E-1 of lot 18 and the 67 in building G-1 on lot 19, with an alternative, but always providing that at least 17% of the BMP units and the commitment to deed lot 19 to Eden Housing, which is a nonprofit public benefit corporation dedicated to developing BMP housing, are all assurances, reasonable assurances of completion of the below market housing. I find that the legal arguments set forth in Mr. Phillips' email yesterday to be insightful and persuasive, including the responses to the positions of the Los Gatos Community Alliance, as well as the comments by our town attorney. And I know that many in the town would envision a much different project. Our subjective opinions have no place in making the decision tonight on the application, and subjective requests would obviously expose the town to tremendous economic risks and penalties and attorney's fees. The only question left, and I'll ask for staff input on this, is whether to incorporate the first 3 bullet points of the condition of approval that was presented at the meeting tonight.
That was presented by the applicant?
Yeah, the slide that was presented.
It sounds like
I think there's
the
overlap.
commission is voting to go with the staff proposal as the conditions of approval were presented to the commission.
Let's not complicate it. So that constitutes my motion.
And I have one question on the developmentally disabled. Is this a good time? Okay. With regard to the part of the motion about developmentally disabled residents, I would recommend that be added to the end of condition approval number 4. And I believe the applicant agreed to commit that 25% of the units in the 100% affordable building on lot 19 will have a preference for developmentally disabled residents.
I'll be happy to incorporate that language. And I also wanted to add on the findings that the project common space, the meadow, and the fact that it'll be open to the public are important factors in recognizing the broader impacts on the community and making the project more integrated with the town of Los Gatos. Thank you.
Okay, can I have a second? We have a motion on the table, so if we, well, yeah, but we still need a second and then we can friendly, I believe. Okay, second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, and then yes, ask
Okay.
your question, yeah.
But I'd actually like to add a couple conditions of approval, if now's the appropriate time. Okay. These are more related to construction activities. I would like to add, and I don't know exactly where this would go. It doesn't look like it quite fits under 111, but that there can be no large vehicles idling on Los Gatos Boulevard or Lark Avenue. And that the preference is that all construction activities are limited to the construction site, that there can be no large vehicles on any residential streets surrounding the project. And I don't know how to do this one, but that any night street work adjacent to residential areas needs to have some type of proper noticing. Is that acceptable to the maker of the motion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are excellent points.
My only recommendation is to define the term large vehicles.
Is,
Do you want me to like Google the size of dump truck?
I mean, sure, or is this something that?
Could Public Works
Yeah, maybe
help?
Public Works or.
I mean, or I could just say any vehicles related to the construction activities are not to idle on Lark or Los Gatos Boulevard. I guess I don't have to put the word large. It could just be any of the construction vehicles. What does Public Works think? Yeah.
Good evening.
Hi.
Thanks for asking the question. Gary Heap, Public Works. We're over here discussing this. Yeah, defining a large vehicle, it's a construction vehicle. Certainly the intent is to maintain everything on site, to not have, I'm trying to think if there's even adjacent residential neighborhoods here that aren't over and across Los Gatos Boulevard. So I'm not sure that we would.
Well,
really
I can tell you on
necessarily have
phase one that any construction vehicles lined up and down Lark and on Los Gatos Boulevard starting around 3 a.m. sometimes and idled and got out of their trucks and yelled and talked. And I would like to prevent that on this phase. So if I just need to say construction vehicles at all are limited to the site, I'm happy to say that.
And I was not here during that phase of construction, but I would guess maybe for large concrete pours, potentially, something like that could have happened. And again, anything that would happen like that would be done under an encroachment permit. It would be done under the oversight of Public Works, and we would make sure and put conditions on there that would restrict the types of things you would be talking about. We wouldn't let them take a lane of traffic without proper traffic control.
Okay.
And we would make sure things were done and noticed properly and people were aware of whatever was happening.
Okay, so is that somehow going to get captured on that then so that we can make that an actionable item that we can reference back to?
I could see language that would say that no use of Los Gatos Boulevard for hauling of materials or storage of materials or idling of trucks without prior authorization of Public Works Department.
And I will just add that I can't find it just now, but typically Parks and Public Works is dealing with construction management plans. So most of that stuff is built in there. We will make sure that if it's not expressly in there, to make sure that this direction is also included.
Thank you.
So I'll adopt that as part of the motion.
Okay, perfect. I think that the only like residential is the phase one. That is, within not on the other side of Lark and Los Gatos Boulevard. Okay, which is yes, right there. Okay. Can I also ask for a friendly amendment related to the trees?
Of course.
The perimeter orchard, open space, and street trees be natives. And as long as staff is comfortable with that, do you want a list of recommendation of like, do you want a list of recommendations with the caveat of like, or to staff's discretion? Would that be helpful for people? Or
I
no?
think to the town attorney's previous comments that if you have something specific in mind, you should enter that now.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you're comfortable leaving it more open, then we would work with their landscape team to come up with what we determine to be a suitable solution.
Okay, well, I will just list some and then have it also be amendable as town staff sees appropriate or up to town staff's discretion. So I think some of the trees that would be appropriate there would be foothill pine, western red buds, bay laurels, which those are in some of the docs, but not all, in some of the descriptions, but not all of them. So black cottonwood, box elder, big leaf maple, holly leaf cherry, California buckeye, blue oak, black oak, valley oak, and canyon live oak. Or another suitable tree that you see fit.
We'll work it in as a list of potential examples.
Thank you.
I'll adopt that as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other discussion about this motion? Yes, Commissioner Stump.
Yeah, I want to say that first, I agree with the majority of what Commissioner Raspy said. Appreciate that. But what I don't agree with is having us move forward without standing questions. We've said that, we've heard from our staff attorney. We've heard from Mr. Phillips, his opinion. We've heard an opinion from the Los Gatos Community Alliance. The ultimate arbiter is the state of California on these questions. And so I guess we can go forward and say we accept what we've heard one way or another versus we wait for those questions to be answered by the state of California, or in some way, shape, or form, we condition what we do tonight based on the response we receive back from the state of California. Because there are things that could come out that could cause us or need to back up. And you might, I guess if you want me to give some examples, there is about imposing a condition. Now, maybe that goes away, Gabrielle, the request that you've made with the state of California on seeks and agrees. But we're also getting a clarification on gross lot area. And you heard Mr. Phillips tonight say, gee, if it turned out that the calculation is not supported by HCD, we would then be entitled to build more units. And he didn't say they wanted to, but he said they'd be entitled. So we still have some open questions that I don't feel comfortable just launching this thing off to the town council with a recommendation. That may be very, very conservative. You can call me that. But I just believe that this is something we should get the final arbiter to weigh in on these questions that have been asked by our own staff as well as the community. Thank you.
I have one more friendly amendment. I'm sorry. The removal of the butterfly bush.
That was included.
Oh, that was.
Yeah,
Okay,
in the
sorry.
original.
I missed that. Sorry. Okay, I respect Commissioner Stump's comments. However, I do have a bit of a different perspective. First, I did not feel like I thought we had consensus on the gross lot area situation from the attorney. So can you clarify that?
I'm in agreement with the applicant's counsel on the definition of gross lot area.
Okay.
But we have had inquiries from members of the public on whether that jibes with state density bonus law. And because there's concern that HCD has written an opinion letter to the city of Agoura Hills saying that the city had wrongfully applied the wrong lot area to an applicant that wanted a density increase. I see that as a different question because this applicant is not seeking a density increase. But we did get a question from the public, and so I did send an inquiry to HCD to get HCD's opinion on that question.
Okay, thank you. So I guess that from my understanding, there's no guarantee that HCD will ever answer any of these questions. And so I think that I am confident in town council's ability to, take more steps and be able to make any changes to conditions of approval based on the conversations that we've had tonight and the opinions and the concerns that we've expressed with regards to making sure that this affordable housing happens. So, and I believe that they can, if information comes to light that would change the situation, I'm confident in their ability to be able to do that. And if they need to have more than one meeting, that, is still an option there. So, but again, that's why I think that I wanted to make sure that we had on the record what sort of situation would elicit what sort of, changes to the conditions of approval, et cetera. Vice Chair Perch, did you want to say something too after that? Thank you.
Well, I guess it is a little bit of a follow-up to that, to the town attorney. If we did get something back from them, and I'm also kind of sounds like they're going to wait for us and then we're going to wait for them, is there any way for us to even put a condition in place now based on that? Or would it really need to wait for council since we don't know what it would contain?
I think what I heard Commissioner Stump proposing was that the item be continued to give HCD more time to respond. Not, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but not draft a condition to address a different reading of gross lot area, but to wait for the HCD response.
Probably should have been moving my lips while you were speaking because that's it. I did not, obviously was not going to make a motion at this point in time, but that would be my recommendation is that, and again, I say this pained because, we've had, good sessions with the applicant. At the same time, my concern is that we need to get this right and not just fire it in and say, hey, if something else pops up and HCD does come back and says, hey, wait a minute, there are some issues here. We ought to really take the time to fix it here and work with the applicant to fix it here than to try and send it off to council and then have them say, well, why did you send this to us when maybe you did not quite have all the detail and all the answers that you needed to. So again, I would just kind of sum it up that we need to really make sure that we get this right. And we've reached out, the communities, Los Gatos Community Alliance has reached out to HCD probably 3 times on the same point to ask for help. Our town attorney was good enough because I asked her at one point in time, why aren't we getting a response? And she said, I'd be happy to reach out to HCD. And that's when they gave us the response that, well, we're going to wait. We're going to wait to see how the Planning Commission acts. And that's a concern for me because maybe they don't want to give advice. I don't know. But, I'd like to see that run a little bit longer, but I do not think this needs to run for a long time. But I don't know, and maybe this would be back to staff. How do we encourage a response from HCD? I would think it's their responsibility, the bloody state of California, right? And this is their job for housing. These are valid issues that have been raised, and they're not going to respond to them. So how would we set a time, to say a reasonable continuance that's not sending us 3 months down the road? I'm certainly not asking for that.
We have a person who's assigned to Los Gatos, and so I'm happy to call that person and ask what the timing of the response would be and if there might be a response, and report back to the commission.
I have just a follow-up question, Commissioner Stump. Just curious, what specific additional information from HCD do you feel like you need? What specific question do you need answered in order to make a finding or not?
I'm just looking for the authoritative answers to the questions and issues that have been raised by the staff. Can we impose a condition of approval on the applicant related to documented agreement? This is this seek and agree. The calculation of density bonus based on gross acreage, confirming that, whether the math that we used is acceptable to HCD. In other words, we've provided really in the equivalent of net acreage versus gross acreage. Will they accept our subtraction of certain pieces of parts of land? Gross minus something equals gross still. That's sort of where we're at. Do we really have their support? And then the questions that came from the Los Gatos Community Alliance, yes, they're asking about the applicability of the January 30th housing element, applicable zoning at the time of application, the status of a single or separate housing development under state law, meaning are these potentially two separate projects, the affordable housing and the otherwise the remainder of the development. Again, they also have the question of using net acreage to satisfy minimum density, compliance with the town's BMP ordinance, and then the land transfer to Eden Housing and how that's actually going to be affected. So those are the open questions or issues.
Okay, so just to clarify, for the gross lot area, I would like clarification about how that would inform any decision making.
Well, if indeed the HCD came back and said that we will not accept that, it's gross, we're not going to accept gross lot area, that would mean that the applicant will no longer be at 30 dwelling units per acre. They will be at 28.75 per acre. And as you heard Mr. Phillips say, they would be entitled to cure that by adding additional units. Not that they necessarily wanted to do that, but that's the cure for that potential issue as it relates to density. In fact, in some ways, bring it on. More housing out there means more affordable housing as well, perhaps.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, Commissioner Sorty had his hand up before, and then Commissioner Burnett.
Yeah, I just wanted to go on record as saying I support the motion. I think we have a motion on the table to move forward. I do think that, if we had the time to just sort of, sit back and ponder this, and we had multiple hearings and not a limit on hearings, then that might be one thing. But we have to act, the town has to act within 5 hearings. So we would, if we were to continue, we would obviously, I think we would run the risk of being in the same place because we have no guarantee that HCD is ever going to respond. I would think they would be inclined to respond to the town attorney at some point in the near future, but I don't think they feel compelled to respond to any community group. If they felt that, I don't know that they have the staff and that it's a practical reality for them to be able to respond to everybody who fancies himself as a community group throughout the state. So I wouldn't count on them responding in detail to to a community group. And I'm speaking a little bit from experience, having worked in the city of San Jose and had a fair amount of experience with interactions with HCD in the past. So, if we were to continue the item, we would end up moving on to a third hearing. There would only be 2 left for the town council, and we could possibly be in the same place next time. So with that, I just wanted to go on record to say I'm very much in favor of supporting the motion and moving the item forward.
Commissioner Burnett.
Yes, thank you. So Because we are a recommending body to the town council, I feel that there are open questions that we don't have answers to. And I think our role is actually to get those answers before we forward a recommendation to the town council. Our town attorney actually addressed HCD as well. It's not just the Community Alliance. And I think it's our responsibility to forward a recommendation that has sought and received the questions and the answers back. And I feel like we probably should and would receive the answers back from HCD regarding these very important issues for this, very important development. So I think that's our role. Our role is to pound out and come up with, this is, we've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and now we can send it to the town council, because that is our role, to sort of give them a product that is pretty much tidied up. So that's sort of where I'm coming from on this. I think there's too many open questions still.
So would you just mind clarifying like what those, specifically what the open questions are and how that information would help us make a better decision, just so we're clear?
Well, for me, it's still the seeking, it's the commitment to the housing, the affordable housing. That's where I have the most of the issue is in that area. And I think our town attorney can address that as well, if you would like.
I missed the question. Okay.
Well, my concerns are we have two sort of conflicting points of view on where we stand on the affordable housing. Are they committed to do the housing, affordable housing, as the project continues on, which seems to be what the state density bonus law says you need to do. And I'm not feeling like I'm getting the commitment that makes me comfortable to say, yeah, we're good there.
And so one way to address that is to forward the staff recommended condition of approval. And then I guess I will say, I have looked at the issue, outside counsels looked at the issue, and we do think that seek and agree means that the applicant is consenting to actually provide the affordable housing.
So just follow up. So if we forward this to the town council, then are they going to have to wait? Because these still are going to be open questions. Isn't that our role to get these questions answered before we move it forward?
I mean, I guess it depends if you're comfortable with the advice that I've provided to date. And if not, then that's one reason to wait.
And I would just add that the motion on the table is the town's requirement of the 17% throughout the project. So that's the guarantee that staff came forward with originally, and so that's still the path moving forward to the council.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other discussion or comments? Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And so it passes, and then 2 opposed and abstain. No, opposed. Okay, so it passes 5-2, and it is just a recommendation, so there are no appeal rights.
That's correct.
And there's nothing else related to this that we need to say. Okay, so thank you, staff, everyone that was here tonight, commissioners, for the very thorough discussion, and applicant team for sticking with us, and being no further business of the commission, this meeting's adjourned.